welcome to the Overlap Rugby Podcast. This is episode 59. I'm Daragh. This here is Shane.
Hello.
Apologise in advance for the sort of background sound of torrential rain that's going outside our window.
It may come out as just a little pitter-patter in your headphone, but it's fairly rotten out there.
Just a standard late July day in Dublin.
One of those normal summer days.
So that's going on where we are, but that's not going to bother us too much because we're talking all things Test footy.
Yes.
And there was quite a bit of it over the weekend. We're going to structure the show. We're going to open it by talking about the two Rugby Championship games, reviewing them. Mm-hmm. Obviously the All Blacks and the Springboks playing out a draw in Wellington, and the Wallabies getting home against Argentina in relatively convincing fashion, and they'll be happy with that. Mm-hmm. Thereafter we're going to discuss all the dramatics of the opening weekend of the Pacific Nations Cup, which included a great win for Japan over Fiji.
Yes.
Which will leave John McKee's men with some things to ponder.
Scratching of their heads.
And we're going to be doing all that in the context of previewing this weekend's games in the Pacific Nations Cup. If you want if you like the show, you want to do any of the nice YouTubey things, you can go ahead and do that. What are they, Shane?
They're like, comment, subscribe, bell.
Hit that bell.
The one that I keep forgetting. Bell.
You gotta hit the bell, otherwise
the Lavion.
Like, what are we doing this for if you're not hitting that bell?
Yeah. That's so this is it. So you can learn about when we're uploading shorter vids, which we obviously will be, but for the meantime, this is the full podcast, and we're going to get into the first game of the weekend. Well, not the first game of the weekend in total, but the first game of the Rugby Championship from the weekend just gone was the All Black Springboks, which to my mind was kind of the deciding fixture of this abridged Rugby Championship for the World Cup year, because they've been the two main contenders for the last.
You're not exactly sticking your neck out.
I'm not sticking my neck out by saying that. But I'm also, it's curious that they played out an epic 16-all draw. Springboks through Herschel Yankees, managing to snatch a draw late on, and quite deserved, because they were dominant for large periods, the whole first half. And it was a back and forth battle where defences really were on top. So a lot of it took place in the middle third of the pitch. When there was some loose kicking from the All Blacks, the Springboks brought a lot of intensity, but sometimes they just found it difficult to get around each other or through each other. It was very much a game of defences. Yeah,
I mean, I had sort of, when I was taking sort of live notes on watching the match, I had sort of come to the conclusion that I thought that New Zealand were going to sneak it. Mostly because, as you say, I thought both defences were on top. But I thought once the benches came on in the second half, it really did look like the All Black offence was finding something. Yeah. I thought Dane Coles made a massive impact. Leonard Brown, obviously, and they were just. Beauden Barrett was growing into the game. Aaron Smith as well was all massive, and the All Black offence was very much finding something, and looked like they were about to put the game away for much of that last 20 minutes, and just couldn't quite do so. I mean, they took a couple of 3-pointers. One in particular to go 16-9 up to secure
very questionable call. Yeah. Very questionable call. Also a questionable call is the two that they missed, because Beauden Barrett was kicking despite Richie Mwanga being on the pitch. I don't know, you were maybe putting forward that maybe they had like a kicking competition during the week and maybe Bodie won it, so that's why he gets the honours, but it always seems like he's being given the nod, and I have always thought he is not the greatest kicker of a ball at all. He's like upper 70th percentile of a place kicker, which is just not good enough.
Where Mullen is higher than that.
Yeah, he's just not good enough for a test level, and it cost them here. Those are 6 valuable points that were left out there.
So for large periods anyway, I thought that neither offence got anything off. I thought the All Black offence started to get off enough, and probably had got off enough to win the game. But they couldn't quite do it. They didn't find that score, and the Springboks were just hanging in there, defending up to the last moment. I think defending pretty well. And then sticking to their structures, very decent set piece. Everything else, I thought Trevor Nyakanye off the bench was massive. Winning scrums, Francois' low body position, as Squidge would say. Getting a massive steal.
Great, and that was crucial to stop what could have been a game. Like the breaking the back of the game was what the All Blacks were going for in that moment.
Exactly.
And then Francois comes in.
Just staying professional, keeping themselves alive, and then in the very last play of the game, finally something between the Pollard and Leroux axis clicks, and Villy Leroux, in sort of a theme of the weekend, came from the blind side of the ruck, disguised from the ruck, and outside back coming from that angle to take sort of a pullback pass was very much. It was something we saw the Australians do as well, and we saw it in a couple of Pacific Nations games too.
Yeah, seems to be a theme.
And it was a lovely little pullback from Pollard to Villy. Great soft hands from Villy, released Cheslin, and a beautiful assist from the little winger with a well-timed tip, and Herschel Yankees running that very good Aaron Smith tracking line that he likes to run, and he gathered the ball, and happy days.
Yeah,
they stole the game.
Aaron. Yeah.
And as Steve Hansen said in his post-match presser, they can't really complain, because how many times have his All Black team done that?
Exactly.
Just escaped with a last-minute play.
True. But whatever about complain, there's room for introspection, and that kick for 16-9 will be one thing. But there are a few other things as well. Like they couldn't get around them, but the few times that they did, it was going into the hands of people like Ben Smith.
Both wingers.
And they just in the instance of Rico, he had a shocking day, and his hands were just absent for the first half, and he was played into space around 3 times in the first half.
He had a couple of bad knock-ons, and he also got shut down by Cheslin.
He did.
Cheslin
made big hits on him a few times.
Most tackles in the whole game.
Yeah, which is great. But the other side is where it's of more concern, which is such a rare thing for me to say. Like, for anyone who's watched this podcast, I love Ben Smith. I think he is probably one of the best players ever to play the game, bar none. He's such a thinker of the game, a reader of the game. But this season in Super Rugby, and now leading into this, I was thinking, watching the Highlanders, he's maybe lost a yard of pace, was my first little thought. And then I saw him make one or two kind of errors under high balls and stuff throughout the season that I would you just never would have seen. And it was a little warning sign for me. And now the fact that he's at 14 for the All Blacks, and those are real concerns, like he is missing that extra bit of pace. He's still, like, in terms of covering the backfield, he never makes errors in decision making, and he's always in the right place that he should be.
Yeah.
But he's not like Rico or like Cheslin. Like there was a moment in that half where he was played into enough space where if you thought that was in Cheslin's hands, or even go back to 4 years ago, Milner Scudder. Yeah. If that was in his hands, it would have been tried. But what ended up happening was he carried for 10 yards before Quagga Smith managed to get him.
Quagga Smith was faster, just covered the open field,
covered the ground quicker.
Space. Yeah.
That's a real concern, because Ben Smith is he is such a fulcrum in that team. It's very hard to say that you'd think I'm thinking of dropping him, but just looking at the performance Bodie had from 15 in terms of doing all of those little bits and pieces that Ben Smith is famous for in this All Black jersey. He covered every chip attacking kick through that was put through, 2-on-1s that were coming his way. He closed them down because he's so fast at it. He makes good reads too, and that just leaves, yes, you have an extra bit of security with Ben Smith there, and defensively this All Blacks team are doing very, very little wrong. So it's hard to call things like that out. But some of the space that he was put into in this game, it's very rare that you see an All Black team fail to capitalize. Yeah,
there's a lot of that. But to have both All Black wingers just not be able to find the scores that they needed to find was an odd sight for sure. Yeah, and things to ponder in that department. And I think I agree with you. I did like the Bodie Mo'unga axis. I thought they grew into the game. I thought Richie in particular had a bit of a rough start, obviously with the 2 charge downs, and just generally not quite being there.
Yeah, he was a bit shook on that from those ones.
Yeah, but that said, it's worth persisting with, and what you get with Bodie at 15 is just with that little bit of pressure valve relieved from him, and you just get to admire him as a player. And then you very,
best players
very quickly realise that
he's
he's probably the All Blacks' best player and their biggest weapon.
Yeah.
And in this era of attacking kicks as an offensive weapon, he is a great.
He shuts them down better than anyone. He covers the space so quickly that it's just not a viable option. Even if you're presented with a picture, you saw it with Argentina last week as well. They were persisting with a drop it on the toe kind of tactic, fast, wide, drop it on the toe. And that can work, and it's yielded a lot of tries for the Jaguares in Super Rugby and stuff, but no one covers that space quite like Bowden.
Yep.
And it just means it's a non-starter against this All Black team, because even if you're kind of seeing a picture that looks like there's space there, you're not going to be the first to it. Bowden's going to be first to it, and then he's going to have time to clear or run back and counter.
Yeah.
So it really does eliminate a large portion of attacking kind of options from the opposition. This All Blacks team were very solid in that front. I did think the Springboks had chances to go wide, but a lot of times it was Villy LaRue was the link man that was breaking it down, and it was so close. Like there was that great little offload from out the back to him that he ended up just dinking away, and it was like that was. Yeah,
that was an odd little moment where it was 3-on-3 in the wide channel, and sort of dragged a couple of men in and flicked it to Villy, and Villy sort of frantically got a very quick hands away to where Mapimpi would have been if he was there, and he would have been in open space. So from Villy's perspective, he might say to Mapimpi, "Stay on your wing," but Mapimpi had actually run an inside line and was gone, and that ball ended up not quite going into touch, but going away. It was
just like illustrative of how like Villy is there, despite some defensive frailties you would think as a fullback compared to some of the other options they have there, like even in years gone by the Andres Coetzee types, who are there, who are a bit more robust but a bit less flash. Villy's there to be flash and fast, but to link up with your Faf, take some pressure off Pollard and access the wide channels, where link up with Mapimpi,
find these boys in space,
and Cheslin. And barring that last effort for the try, we didn't see that all game. We actually saw the picture of it going wrong, which we've seen a few times. Like Villy's not infallible at all. I've seen it in a Wasps jersey, seen it in a Springbok one, where when it doesn't go right for him, there's a lot of wasteful moments where it's like, this is prime attacking possession that's now not. Who knows when we're going to get or see that again.
I think the structure of their team makes a lot of sense. I think the two centres are excellent value. I think having
we haven't even touched on that.
No, we will. But I think the 9, 10, 15 distribution axis for the box with solid defensive centres and killers on the wings makes a lot of sense as a structured team. And then the question is going to be, we know who 9 and 10 is, we know who those centres are, who's going to be that distributor from 15? It has been Villy, but it wasn't an infallible performance. What you can say is that they left him on the pitch because they know he can make magic happen, and in the last play of the game he made magic happen. He opened the space with some soft hands and put Cheslin away. He made that try in a lot of ways for Herschel Yankees to score. But there's others in the wings. There's Gallant
is the main kind of pretender to his throne, I would say, because he's a similar kind of player, brings similar options.
I would say if nothing else, it might be the worst shout to have Gallant on the bench, to have someone you can bring in for Villy, because it's more likely that Villy doesn't show up than Am doesn't show up, and that's at the moment you've a like for like change with Creel and Am.
But it's not quite.
It's not. It's just a downgrade, and it doesn't really change anything up positively for the Boks. The Bok defense, which we've only briefly touched on, it did set the tone for the game, and Am is the leader of that defense.
Am absolutely smashing. Was it? Who was it? Was
the
it
two centres?
The two of them. But who did he get first? I think
he got Goodhue first.
He got Goodhue first, and then he smashed Sonny Bill, and then Sonny Bill was wearing a little bit of scarlet on his nose from that contact for the rest of the game. Sonny Bill himself had a very creditable return to the fold. Like he did keep offering himself.
He'd been playing no rugby really.
He was up for the fight. But he wasn't quite up at the intensity or just the level that we associate with him. Like there were a few moments where he got caught, thought about getting the offload away, but then didn't, and it was just it was very much a Sonny Bill kind of unsure of himself. But part of it must have been that hit early on was shaping that. It was very much a welcome back to international footy. Here I am now.
For the second year in a row, has just completely shut down at the All Black attack, and he's frightful. Awesome. He's frightfully good as a defender. Awesome. He shoots when he needs to shoot. He's like this really calm, assured figure, and he seems so cool and relaxed, and then he can just strike.
He also pairs very nicely with Delindi. I think their balance is great, to be honest. I think he's exactly what Delindi needs to just do his job. When you can trust that Am's outside you, it means you get the most out of both of them. And I actually do think your point on Creel, despite the fact that Jesse Creel is a great player, has been a stalwart in this Springbok team for quite a while. A lot of time. He is a similar enough player to apart from his tackles just aren't the same. And that was what was telling in the last few minutes when the All Blacks were starting to get a bit more momentum finally in the game. It was because they took Am off after 60 minutes, and Creel was in there.
Took him off after 50 minutes.
50 minutes, and then it just meant the wider channels were suddenly more open because there was no one shutting them down so finally. Whereas Creel was sometimes making similar reads, getting up, getting the hit. But then what you were seeing was that the player hit by Creel was on his feet long enough to get the ball away, and there was no breakdown formed.
And that never happened with Am. Every time Am
ragged on people to front. He did that to Sam White.
Yeah, I was going to say,
picked him up and threw him on the ground.
One moment was just incredible. He had initially shot out because Sam Whitelock was going to link up with the backs, and he cut that off. So Whitelock decided to take the short line, kind of got into a man, and he just ran back, grabbed Sam Whitelock, and hurled him back towards his own goal line.
Yeah,
and it's
awesome.
Just
he's frightfully strong,
freakishly strong.
Yeah.
Kanyuam, and definitely, I would say at the moment, the premier defender of the 13 channel in the world.
Yeah,
and I don't know that it's close.
Can't think of anyone else who's in his league. Like, I think Robbie Henshaw does a similar job for Ireland, but from 12.
Yeah,
but
and even so, like a couple of years ago, maybe, but he's not
reached that
level.
same level yet. Yeah, no, but in terms of just the marauding nature of the tackles, where it's so quickly wrapping everyone up that there's not even a hint of an offload coming. You're just going down. The new move is snuffed out. Whereas with everyone else, there seems to be a little bit more margin and wiggle room for that. And certainly in Jesse Creel's performance for the last 25-30 minutes of that game, he was making decent reads but not completing the tackle and finishing the play.
There were a few moments where they were being opened up in those channels, and it was because of that 13 channel wasn't being shut down quite like how Alm was shutting it down beforehand.
And then comparatively, like what Creel may bring you as far as maybe a little bit more pace and in terms of ball in hand, it's so marginal marginal. It's just a matter of like looking at your stat sheet and going, well, he's got a bit better on this front and that. But I'm thinking just offers so much surety that
Am will find tries as well.
He will,
if you keep him in there, he will find tries.
Exactly, and it's like compared to that point you were making about Villy. Villy's a bit more of an up and down kind of less steady performer altogether. So if you have someone like Allant on the bench, you have the capacity to change it up very quickly. Whereas with Creel, you're not actually really changing anything up. The only thing he's there to cover is if Am breaks his arm in contact, and then you have to bring Creel on.
I thought the two subs were a bit weak, to be honest with you. The two backline subs, obviously not Herschel, but the outside backs. They thought that the problem was the two centres, or they elected to take Delindy and Am off, who were their strong points. And it seemed like a losing call, because they had started to lose the 50-50s thereafter. Up until the likes of Francois Lowe and Inya Kanye got them back into the game with some big plays. But it was telling that when the move came, it was Pollard and LaRue and Colby,
Cheslin,
as opposed to either of those two centres, Franz Stein and Creel. And I think, if they're honest, that their best, most impactful outside back replacements would be Elton Yankees, with a mind to maybe moving Pollard to 12.
Go double Yankees, Herschel, Elton,
and then Killant. And that's a stronger back bench
than what they brought.
In terms of their forwards, I thought they stood up really well. I thought nice balance to the back row. Peter Steff got through a load of work. Both flankers did, really.
True.
Quagga Smith as well was
Smith was a tackling
very
machine.
busy. Very busy.
He was tackling all day.
And Peter Steff was there for all the scrappy ball moments. Etzebeth had a busy 50 minutes.
He did.
Won his collisions.
Yeah, so did Mustard, to be fair.
Mustard played 80 and he was great.
And then Peter Steff came off, or not Peter Steff, Snyman came in for Etzebeth, who obviously had two shifts back to back, 2 weeks in a row. Snyman came on, was very physical, marauding, nearly blew the game with a ridiculous hit that could have been the losing of the game off a kickoff to
that's
give
right,
away the penalty. In terms of he was in a fracas just before it. Then the All Blacks kicked free, and then the next play was him hitting someone in the air.
I thought
and I was just like going,
you didn't like that.
I didn't like that at all. I was like, that's potentially game losing, and it could have been. It could have been a much more of a talking point than it ultimately.
He had some big line-out steals.
He did.
I thought he played well.
The best
otherwise.
exponent of that skill, and it's because he's so tall. Like, and it's nothing
and
like
dexterous.
He is like, so he's very useful to have jumping up at 2 to pressure kind of shaky lineouts late in the game. He's a good man to have in there, and as you were saying last week, he's a better option for that than Etzebeth, just purely because Etzebeth's too damn heavy and not quite tall or rangy enough to be doing that. Whereas like you feel like with some of the underthrows you're seeing in some of these tournaments, Snyman doesn't even need to be lifted; he can just swat them down from 2.
And I thought the Safa scrum, I had mentioned Enya Kanye. They were doing okay. I thought, yes, it was sort of like I had predicted in the week running up to it that the scrum was going to be par for course, except for the odd time Kitsoff gets on top of it, and that was more or less how it panned out.
Apart from the benches were
that's the thing.
Night and day.
It's when Trevor Enya Kanye came on at tight head, he just changed the game, and he made a crucial scrum penalty victory after crucial scrum penalty victory. And for a converted loosehead and a guy who has had a shaky history in the Bok jersey, to say the least, he looked mighty impressive. And is going to be giving Razzie some thoughts about Frans Malherbe and exactly how much he brings to the table.
Yeah.
And whether his jersey's going to be under pressure. Not to mention Vincent Koch who's in the background as well.
Thinking, their depth is something scary.
Yeah.
And comparatively, on the other side of that, the All Blacks, those props, like it was Franks, it was Moody. They were solid at scrum time, has to be said. They bar I think one loss, they were solid at scrum time.
Thought Franks was looking slow enough.
They bring very little in the loose, and it's like all they're there to do is shore up the scrum, which is fair, but it's pretty old school, and it's not what you'd associate with the All Blacks at all. And then when they came off, what came off the bench, like they did manage to win one big scrum when it was all the All Black bench against the starting props of South Africa.
Frans Malherbe's last play of the game.
And then immediately Razzie changed them, and then immediately the course of the scrum changed. So it's hard to credit the All Blacks too much with that. They just got one over on quite a fatigued pack at that point. But just looking at throughout the All Black pack, those two props, admittedly now, both of their hookers are world class and do some amount of extracurricular work for a hooker, like looking at Cody Taylor's fizzing floated left hand passes out to the wide channels, amazing. And then you have him for 60 minutes, and then in comes Coles, who has to be double marked for the whole game in the wide channels, which is what they were doing. At one point he did his normal little line, there was a 2-on-1, carried into contact, sucked them in, was getting that hand free, and Snyman had to do a desperation kind of
great tackle.
It was a great tackle. It was a very necessary one, because you can see the tape that he'd been watching on Dane Coles, being like, he's doing it again. I'll get him. And it's like to have those two options now, that is properly elite. But comparatively, what the props jerseys are bringing, both won.
They have, nobody has grabbed that jersey. Like Tui Nukuafe seemed like the guy
came last year, and now has fallen out of favour a little bit. He did get bullied a little bit in Dublin, actually. Ty Furlong, that's right. Because he came pushing through the ranks of the Super Rugby, but he's not that experienced in terms of there's a lot of other ways of nuance to scrummaging. Like it takes years to build that base.
You have bad days and good days for sure.
But the other point I was going to make on the pack, because I obviously think that their rows are no weakness, but with Brodie gone down now, that brings that into flux a little bit. But the presence of Brodie, Retallick and Whitelock is properly elite, and they have obviously Barrett to come back as well.
Brodie was getting some of those nice line-out steals.
He was getting, he's another one like that. He's actually so deceptively kind of nimble in the air, because he's such a big rangy man, but they can flick him up there.
He's a rugby player. He's good at it all,
and we hope he has a speedy recovery and gets back.
There was a lovely moment where he actually got one over on Cheslin, because the All Black wingers like to charge up so much that he did a little dummy pass and delay and then give and opened up some space, and he has those plays in him.
He plays like a 10 sometimes, even though he's 6'9" or whatever. But my point I was going to make in terms of just looking at that whole All Black pack that used to be so formidable, and now they're trying to play more of a forward oriented game, and they're still unsure about their back row. Like Frizzell, I thought played pretty well.
I think the 6 jersey is Frizzell's to lose.
I would think so too, but I just don't know. It feels like next week they may drop him again and bring someone else.
They might rotate, but I think in the big games Frizzell has the 6 jersey.
And then
Fifita's behind him, and he's not.
Matt Todd had a decent game, but by looking at it, he actually made some decent plays in the loose as well. But I wonder if he's actually test level 7. Like when you're looking at what the likes of actually Francois Lowe coming off the bench can do for you, or Pocock. The ideal
he's not on that level.
He isn't, but he's in the same mould. But he doesn't feel as elite. And then Kieran Reid is the other one who I have to make the point about. Kieran Reid has not looked himself since the last World Cup, to my mind. He's playing a different role within that team. What I associated with him at his very, very height of his powers in 2015 was being in those wide channels, like what Dane Coles is doing right now, and just operating as that extra playmaker / forward, so he can drop the shoulder and carry over a winger if it's going, or he can
those silky
get
hands
the hands going. But he's playing a lot from one out from the ruck, or just pick and jamming, and he does not win those contacts with other forwards. He's quite a slight number 8 by modern standards, and he's not. That's not where he's at his best. He also feels like he has one bad drop in him every game these days. There's one random inexplicable drop where his hands are kind of losing him, and I'm just a bit concerned. Him coupled that with the Ben Smith point I was making, and these are two legends of the game, stalwarts and really fulcrums in that Kiwi team, in that All Black team. and I don't see them as hitting their own standards at all. And that's a concern for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's probably indicative of just how they want to play the game as well. Like when Kieran Reid was winning Player of the Year nominations, he was performing, as you say, a very different role.
Right, he was afforded that because his partners were Richie McCaw and Jerome Kaino, who are two of the most dogged workhorses and physical players
I think
ever.
in the form he's in, Artie Sevilla is going to make a difference. When he comes into that 7 jersey, I think that's your at the moment your starting back row. Frizzell, Sevilla. And Reid, and I think Sevilla's going to make a big impact. He's a playmaker. He's making plays out there all season, and that's exciting. I also think you have to give a shout out to TJ Perenara, who was playing defensively was basically playing 7. I mean, he was every single ruck.
Breakdown,
he was in the breakdown. He was trying to get a jackal. He was slowing up the ball so often, and actually managed to generate a few steals from it. But it was literally every breakdown he was in. He was the first man, and he had to be cleaned out, and it was taking time away from the Bok attack, and a real factor in why they weren't able to get anything going, because they so rarely had quick, clean ball. And TJ was
you gotta love TJ.
It was a good defensive role for a scrummy. Why not?
He did get one or two little bits of notions as a result of that. I remember he peeled off the back of a breakdown and decided he was going to perp his way through Quagga Smith and just got smashed and stripped of the ball. And it's like, you're still a halfback. TJ, you may be the toughest halfback in the world, but you're still not going to run through a 7.
No, indeed.
But
that's kind of not great from TJ. But generally speaking, as without the ball, I thought he was class.
Defensively. I mean, he was such a nuisance for that Bok team, and that is part of like we were considering. Like Quagga Smith obviously was at 6, and then they opted for Peter Steff at 7. So that was like before Francois comes off the bench. They don't really have an out-and-out open side on the pitch. So there are avenues there, especially for someone as unassuming as TJ. Like, you can see the box just overlooking the fact that he's anywhere near the ball.
It's just forcing them to maintain a disciplined offensive breakdown, which is something that the box can occasionally lose sight of. It just forces them to do it. And on the few occasions that they weren't doing it, he was getting the steals.
Very impressive.
A huge factor in how that All Black defense was shutting down a lot of what the Boks were doing. Yeah,
that's one thing I will say for this All Blacks. I said it before. Like, I've never seen an All Black team as defensively sound as this one. Now, that being said, the caveat to it is they're not scoring tries with anywhere near the same authority as all the All Blacks teams I ever remember from years gone by, but they are very, very robust on defence, and
Retallick plays such a huge role in that. Everything that happens in the narrow channels gets shut down. He tends to be leading that line. He makes a load of tackles, and it's just extremely physical and up for the fight.
Same to be fair to Whitelock, they partner very well. They're very physical. They're very border. Actually, Whitelock is very borderline a lot in terms of he can very often slow break down or slow rucks down by just lingering. And he has that clumsy looking kind of body that it looks vaguely accidental, but it's not. It's clearly very deliberate. But there's just wisdom in it. I'm concerned for Brodie. He's obviously out for the rest of this tournament anyway, and it's a race against time.
It's a dislocated shoulder. They suspect there was no extra damage, there was no fracture. They suspect that he'll be back.
Grand, because he's vital.
Totally.
If he's out, then this New Zealand team is.
But I still think anyway that it's ultimately losing if they think that their path to the final is just to bully everybody. Like there's other teams have ripostes to that second row partnership. The Boks will come at you with your Etzebets and your Snymans and your Mosterts. Ireland will throw a James Ryan and an Ian Henderson and a Dev Toner down your throat. England will come at you with Itoje and Cruz. Wales,
maybe a Launchbury in there as well.
Wales will have your Alan Wynne-Jones and his buddy.
whoever his buddy is for the day in question, but it'll be Alan
Wynne-Jones.
Yeah, no, you're dead right in saying that it's not an infallible one, and it just seems to be a bit kind of counterintuitive for what you'd associate with the All Blacks.
The notable things about the game that a lot of people had picked up on, I noticed it instantly as soon as Razzie came in, about the Bok defence, is just how narrow the wingers play.
People were calling out Mapimpi for that Goodhue try because he bit in, but that was something that they all do.
It probably was an error, especially when you consider the way Am read the play. Am shot up narrow and actually had the two men covered and was kind of thinking, if Mapimpi holds his wing here, I might be able to get either of these guys. But Mapimpi came in on the guy on the left, which left the overhand pass. there for a very nice try that Bowden Barrett managed to skittle by and was
brave,
valiantly trying to cover that space, but Barrett got away.
Catching Bodie in that amount of space.
No, indeed, and he wasn't able to. But I just thought, as a broader point, that was one time that the All Blacks off turnover ball, their only try of the game, did manage to exploit it. But I thought that pass was there to be thrown a few times, and they just, and a recurring theme for the All Blacks, they just aren't throwing that pass like they were 4 years ago.
Their catch pass is not as good as it was 4 years ago.
But they're also just decision-wise, they're just not electing to play in those areas. And there was a theory after the Ireland-New Zealand game last year that they were maybe keeping some stuff in their back pocket, and they were playing narrow to see if they could play narrow, but they were going to bring out the attacking factor when the World Cup came. I'm just still not seeing this.
I find that somewhat unconvincing, because the game is at such a level now that you have to practice as you intend to kind of act in the World Cup. There's no room for just we'll just dust off our 4 years ago form and just bring it out when we need it in the World Cup.
The tries that they were scoring 4 years ago were almost muscle memory for a load of times. It was like, this is a familiar picture. It's a 3-on-2 in 15 metres of space. We're just going to score. And there were a few occasions where
this team are far less unrelenting in their scoring as that team was. In all those pictures, you could sense it in the crowd when a loose kick was kicked to the All Blacks, and you just go, oh no, as the fullback comes charging back, and then sure enough it is dotted down under the sticks. It'll earn a phase later, if even, probably more likely off that first phase. And you're seeing much less of that with this team. And
they're not electing to throw that pass that's on when the likes of Mapimpi and Colby shoot in. They're much more comfortable taking it into contact. They want more. They're I don't know the stats on it, but I'd be shocked if they're not taking way more breakdowns than they used to. And it's a factor.
It's one of those things.
It's something they're going to have to think on ahead of that Bok game.
For sure.
World Cup.
Yeah, because they're going to run this back. Of course, this is going to be such a curtain raiser for the World Cup, that fixture, and it really is the Boks who have one up on them now as a result of that. The Boks will be leaving Wellington with their tails very much held high, or their heads held high, and deservedly so. It was a beautiful try to snatch the game, but it was a great first half where they really should have scored more than 6 points. Probably that
back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, probably that decision to take the 3 to go to 6-0 up was maybe regrettable, because they weren't there again for quite a while, and it was like the All Blacks were reeling. It felt like they were going to give.
That's the thing that you can't the commentators had said it live that here's 3 free points under the sticks. But it was just a lack of...
my least favourite phrase in rugby, 3 free points. It's not 3 free points. It's 3 points and release all the pressure that you've just been
building. That's what you pay for.
You
pay for a release of the pressure valve. And while it wasn't as risky as it would have been in times gone by against the All Blacks, where they're going to riposte with an immediate try, what it was just a lack of appreciation that actually it was quite a rare moment in the game to have the opportunity to take maybe a scrum or a line out, 5 out from the All Black line. They got virtually none of them for the whole game, and they had an opportunity there to get it and maybe get a try on the board, and elected instead to take 3 points. And it is what it is.
It's a different game if that happens, that you can't really go 0 on back and saying, well then they would have won the game, because then it would have been 5 points.
You would have known.
You wouldn't have known. It could, the All Blacks would have had to respond, so that would have made
it can raise the stakes if you're in that scenario. You can take your solid 6-0, it's a win, we have our early period, and go back to restarting anew. Or you can go for the try, in which case the stakes are high, because if you fail to get the try, it's a massive win for the All Blacks.
True.
As opposed, and not to mention the lack of scoreboard pressure, but if you do win, obviously it's a huge psychological and scoreboard win for you. So it depends on where you want to be. But I think if you want to be winning those games out in New Zealand, maybe that was something they could have gone for.
It's one of those ones. It's those points you make. It's like to win games, it takes tries, and to get tries, you need to go for them and recognize when you're against an opposition as elite as New Zealand, and they were getting several sequences of play where they were getting things off against them. They were winning contacts. Just recognize that's not going to last for the whole game. New Zealand will grow into the game. They'll have their purple patch. They'll have their chances for tries. Let's take ours.
Interestingly, Rassie had actually said in his post-match presser that he wanted... he was annoyed that they didn't go for the try, not on that occasion, but actually on the occasion that Pollard missed his kick. I recall him being very annoyed when he missed that kick to go 9-0 up.
Yes,
he had said that maybe that was the time to go in the corner and get a try. He said that in his post-match presser, and was more annoyed then to see the kick sail wide when the boys on the pitch decided that was the way to go about it.
Interesting. But, yes, he was very visibly animated. He's a lovely value on the cam, on the old coach cam. Is Razzie? He's good. He's
does
animated.
Not hide his emotions.
No, he does not.
But he's done a very, very good job with South Africa. A frighteningly good job, and has turned them into one of the top contenders, if not the favourites, for the World Cup from here on out. And yeah, I'm already giddy about the prospect of running this one back in September in the World Cup.
Yeah, it's definitely it's advantage South Africa really for the first time in 4 years more in the context of this rivalry. Yeah, well, like in the context of this rivalry, they're in pole position to take the Rugby Championship, such as it is this year, because they do have to go to Buenos Aires, but the All Blacks
could heap the pressure on with a big win over Argentina of Australia in the morning.
Yeah, that's what I said. There's still permutations to go, but it's definitely advantage Springboks, I would say.
I don't know.
I would say that. Yeah.
We'll see. It would be very tame of the All Blacks to not get the bonus point against Australia, which would mean that all the Blacks have to do is win.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what the All Blacks do in that opening game. But then if it comes down to the Boks having to get a bonus point win, bearing in mind that bonus points aren't 4 tries, they're winning by 3 tries.
Yes.
That's actually a tricky enough proposition in Buenos Aires, and a recipe for maybe getting a bit flounder-some and silly and
possible. It's true.
Yeah, loose.
There's still 2 good fixtures to come, but that was definitely my game of the tournament so far.
Oh, totally.
16-all in Wellington. Awesome defensive display from both.
Yeah.
And yeah, just nice to see them cancelling each other out and being properly dogged and competitive. Even down to the haka was great, and the response to it, it was a proper old school test.
Tawira just looking upon the haka with contempt.
Yeah.
And a shout out to Herschel as well for 3 tries in 2 weeks.
What a start to his Springbok career. He's grabbed that 21 jersey with both hands, and he's not going to let it go. Yeah, no, he was awesome. It was a great game.
Yeah.
So I suppose we'll move on.
There's probably enough time to be devoting to it. The other game, which I can't imagine we'll spend as long talking about, was
Wallabies Argentina.
A rather scrappy affair.
16-10 it ended up finishing.
The Wallabies
within one score.
The Wallabies were definitely good for the win.
Yeah. They had that kick. Tamu missed a kick to put it beyond doubt, which, well, what Tamu was doing there in substitute 10 mode, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Wallabies were definitely, they looked better. They looked actually a little bit more organised and a bit more cohesive.
I had enjoyed, I think we said it in last week's show, just that the difference in selection was always going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's much closer to their first team.
Yes.
I think right now Leia Lefano is that little bit better than Bernard, without setting the place alight. But
no, well, their fulcrum is Beale.
Yes.
And Beale is at 15, looking much better for it.
And crucially on the wing, Karabetti I thought was great.
Yeah.
And a real electric,
a bit of
energy
spark.
into the team, and a finisher as well. And he was the guy who burst through the line on that strike play that earned Reece Hodge's try.
Yeah.
And it's just it is much better, much closer to what.
And I think Hodge on form holds his jersey as well. I think that's right. He's not the most scintillating attacking player in the world, but what he does is his job very well, and tends not to let you down as far as really sloppy mistakes are concerned. He's not the guy to make them. So with Beale there pulling the strings, taking that pressure off, Leilefano, Genia obviously first choice 9 as well, speed of ball.
Genia had a really good game.
It makes much more sense of those centres, the Karevi and Kurandrani in the centres, which is still a bit direct for an Aussie centre pairing.
I still don't think that Kurandrani has played well in either of the first 2 games.
Yeah.
His is one jersey. You wanted Anmashi Cooper in the 13. I could see that.
Yeah.
Or even Reece Hodge.
Maybe.
I think I don't know that he's giving them anything in particular at all.
Whereas
Karevi is giving them.
Karevi's trying his heart out, really, but it's just the balance between the two. Even when they both, if they were to both play well, I'm still unsure as to whether it'll work at all as a pairing or a partnership. But I think it's still very much unproven. One thing it is probably slightly more defensively robust than they had been in years gone by with the Foley-Beale axis in the midfield. They were yielding some yards to just your typical Delindy carry on that short line. They were just very susceptible to that, whereas they're less so now. But they're still, where their weakest is still kind of in the pack, which is what was so strange in this. They were dominant in the scrum against this Argentinian team.
Even James Slipper off the bench.
Against
Herrera.
I haven't seen him go forward in a scrum in years.
Yeah.
And that's very concerning. It's got to be a heartbreak for Ledesma in the coaching booth for Argentina. Like, they just can't scrummage.
We had said,
can't lock one down.
We had said after the Jags Crusaders game that the thing that Argentina needed to add to the game was an excellent 10 and an excellent tight head. Mm-hmm. And while it looked promising to see, Figallo and Sanchez come in, neither of them have been great since they've come into the team. Now, there is still time between now and the World Cup, but from Argentina's perspective, this was definitely in the negative column, because the standard of this game was not great.
Yeah, it was lower, especially it came just after the previous
being
one.
Played at a very slow pace. Even when it was speedy, it was not intense. It was just
chaotic.
Kind of crazy chaos plays, knock-ons everywhere, low stakes almost, because there were errors just being unpunished, and then a fair few scrums, which is where the Wallabies took control of the game.
One stat I heard was that both teams had tackle completion rates in the 70s.
Yeah, there you go.
And both sides had that.
Yeah,
and that's a bit weak, to be honest. That's going to lose to either of the other two teams.
And so neither side setting the world alight defensively, and Argentina in particular, one of the things, they're just creating chances and getting very frantic and not finishing them.
Yeah.
And I think Australia exposed just a little weakness in their wide play. I mean, they like to get it into their wingers' hands. They make no secret about that. No. But they need the opportunity to maybe attack somewhere else, because what Australia did very well is number up, maintain their width, and just adopt a disciplined stance of never giving their winger the outside. It doesn't matter if it's a 2-on-1. I'll stay on my winger and you can go inside, and I'll leave whoever's on my inside to try and snatch you. But I'm staying marking this winger, and it did work. And even when Mojano got the ball, it doesn't matter what deception he does, like, he's just going to try deception, I want to go outside. Like, the Australian defensive winger who was on him, who was Reece Hodge, just knew he's going on the outside, I'm not going to show him the outside, and very often he would take it on anyway, and I think on a few occasions he went into touch.
Bundled into touch needlessly.
It was very soft. It was poor for large periods from Argentina. I thought. Yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree.
Mojano especially has had such a great season, but he has looked a bit flaky in both of these fixtures on the wing. I still don't know what the crack with Boffelli is. I don't know if he's injured or he's out for tactical reasons. Tuchel did play well. This is what I'm thinking. I wouldn't mind seeing him and Tuchel on the pitch at the same time.
Is that Boffelli on the wing then?
Yeah, maybe. But just it shores up that backfield a little bit, as far as they can both cover that space very well. But I'm pretty convinced that they would gel pretty well. I think they have a similar kind of way of playing the game, even though Boffelli's bigger.
Yeah.
But Tuchel reads the game very well.
Slightly more technical.
He's silky, and that's why you could have him draw men and put Boffelli in. Boffelli, even when he plays on the wing, you never see him get bundled in to touch as softly as we saw with Mojano in that game.
No,
he never really, when the outside's not on, he will step in. But more often he'll try and deception beat you whichever side you're showing him. I wouldn't mind seeing that as a progression for it. I thought Diaz-Bonilla did all right when he came in for the last 10 minutes. I think
him and Escura looked better than Cubelli and Sanchez.
Sanchez and actually Cubelli as well. Like, Cubelli last week was annoying me as well for some loose box kicks, but Sanchez has not gelled with the Jaguares kind of team yet at all. It doesn't seem to be working. But also Cubelli is very frantic at the base. I think it's sometimes he's too quick, sometimes he's too slow, sometimes the pass is low, sometimes it's high. So the box kicks are frequently too long and not high enough. I don't
Sanchez, know. He has that big bomb in him that he actually implemented sparingly this week, but very regularly last week. They sort of moved to it in the second half. When he was trying to stay ball in hand, it didn't look any better than what Diaz-Bonilla was giving the Jags. And that is a concern. I took note during the game. I was just sort of bemoaning the fact that they're wanting a 10. Just imagining Owen Farrell playing in this team, because the accuracy of the skip passes and the decision making of which pass to give was very much off from Sanchez and whoever found themselves in that position. They just weren't sticking those passes and weren't finding the space with them, even when it was there to be found, in such a way that Owen Farrell definitely would.
Well, it's easy enough to say that this team would be much better with Owen Farrell at 10.
I'm not sticking my neck out too far here with that one either.
No.
But I'm just imagining how much better they'd be.
Yes. Oh well, I suppose it's a nice
with a player
picture.
like that, and they just haven't got it at the moment, and it's a concern.
It is. Well, Sanchez's Stade Francais form is obviously not taking it, setting the world alight.
The game they're playing over there
probably,
isn't great.
That's probably what it is, like compared to the helter-skelter Jag stuff, and it sometimes looks vaguely Jaggish, but then other times
I'd like to give him a shot with Ezcura. I think what you're saying about Capelli rings true. I don't know where Landajo is, obviously. It seems like he's gone. He doesn't seem to be in the picture at all, whether that's an injury or whatever it is.
Whatever, yeah.
But he was obviously great with Sanchez for years. Maybe giving Ezcura the chance, just maybe a quicker, more solid 9 might be a better bet.
Yeah, I definitely
before just dropping Sanchez, who because we know Diaz Bonilla has no boot, and
he's a weaker option than what we know Sanchez can bring. But what I've seen is just Sanchez just out of sync with the rest of the team around him.
But more is the point that they need to get in sync ahead of the World Cup.
Yeah, well, this is what the Rugby Championship is for. They obviously have this week. They have a test against the
2 weeks.
They have 2 weeks against South Africa, which is pretty good prep considering they're going to have England and France. Which is, I think, two tough.
Neither of those sides are going to be any more physical in the box.
Exactly, and arguably less, judging by what the Box were doing in Twickenham last year. Even though they lost that game, they were just
running over
through the contacts. Yeah. So that'll be a good, solid test for them. But they do need to find some way of gelling, and they need to execute a few tries, a few more than they're showing, because that's what their whole game is built on. And just when they're not executing, it looks so loose and so floundersome that it's very hard to get on board with. And it was very hard to see them winning this game from minute one. Really, you were just looking at it going like, the Wallabies are here to play, and the Argentinians are a bit absent. Couple that with a few horror plays like Lavanini getting his hands in all over the place, giving away loose penalties all the time.
Lavanini is a guy who could be I thought the replacement second row came on and did a creditable job, and I think Lavanini is a guy who, despite all the hype, he's quite physical, but he's just an absolute disaster when it comes to giving away penalties.
His discipline is shocking, and it's repeated. It is a repeated trend.
It's up there. Years now.
We give Kyle Sinclair some slack for his Six Nations and November form in that front. It's the same problem that Lavanini has. He's just seems to lose the head and go in, and just like some of the penalties he gives away would make you think that he's never even played the game before, because he's just in all kinds of horrendous positions.
He just loses the head sometimes, and he cost Argentina fairly dear in the game. So I think he's a guy they could do with getting out of there, and hopefully they can play themselves into some kind of form. But right now, where it was looking in Super Rugby, they've taken
a few steps back,
especially in this game. They've taken a step back.
I
thought
Facundo Issa was good value for his try. I thought he deserved it.
Good.
It was. I also thought, what a weak try for Argentina to score 13-man line out maul job. Or was it 11? I think it was 11-man maul, and it's reminds me of that Ireland game from years ago, long, 99, where they try and desperately with a 14-man line out to maul over and then drop the ball or something. But they actually made the play this time, which is a distinction with difference. But I don't think it speaks, especially in the 70th minute when you're so far down, I don't think it speaks to too much confidence in what you got going on when you're 5 metres out and you're trying an 11-man maul.
They couldn't get anything going for much of the game, and that was a shame for them. Pablo Matera good in defence, and Facundo Issa good all over. Those would be the two positives. And I actually thought Montoya at hooker, in the absence of Creevy,
did actually very well. That's true, which is good to know that they have some depth there as well behind Creevy, who doesn't really have 80 minutes properly in him anymore, but he does have very good 50-60 minute performances.
For Australia, it's a lot more positive. I wouldn't go it was a win that was built on the back of a scrum. It was a win that was played at very little intensity. You wouldn't be going mad about it.
It was another win in Suncorp.
It was another win in Suncorp. I'd be curious to see how their scrum goes against the All Blacks, because the All Blacks have a very tidy scrum.
Yes,
that'll be telling, because this Argentinian scrum is sort of giving it away.
The best the Wallabies can hope for is parity in it.
Probably.
But I think that's probably what they'll get.
I liked the strike play off the scrum. It was a disguised screen that made the try. It was your standard screen move, except it was the blindside winger again.
Yes,
coming off the back of the scrum,
adding an extra man,
the back end to the screen. So Creevy ran the short ball, and Argentina just didn't react quick enough to him entering the line from the blindside wing. Didn't cover the space. The inside centre just got stuck on Creevy. opened up a massive hole, and then from there, as the Wallabies will do, they fixed the 3-on-2 sharply
and gave it's like
that was a very good set piece. Michael Cheika try, and a bit of a throwback to the Australia that we have loved in brief spurts over the last 4 years.
They still show flashes of it. And, definitely, when they get their tactics right, and in terms of a strike move, it can be some of the prettiest stuff ever. Like, think of some of those moves they pulled on England in the last World Cup were absolutely glorious. The little inside out Beale and Foley combining kind of stuff. It was great.
Again, with the disguised blindside.
Exactly. It's isolating kind of laziness around the fringes with that one. Yeah. But they were also doing things like isolating, sitting people down inside, and then opting to throw the massive looping ball over the top because they knew the defence was narrow. Six Nations defence narrow. Flick it over to the wing, you'll be fine. Even if it has hang time, it's fine. He's a good thinker on the game on that front. And to be honest, this backline had looked sharper, looked more of a balance that's capable of executing there. Where last week they could have tried that move, and it would have gone arse ways somewhere along the line, because there was just
Will Genia is a huge factor as well. I thought the whole game was a lot quicker, and he was running the show for large bits. I mean, he kind of gave Leilafano a bit of an armchair ride. They were playing a lot off 9, as they were last week, except it was quicker and sharper, and he played sharp. For pretty much the whole game. So there was positives there. The Aussie game needs to be about finding as many tries as is humanly possible, especially in this new mould of defensive footy that we're seeing. The Wallabies need to be trying to buck that trend and find tries. That's their only path to success. It's just to lightening the opposition with some tries and tries.
That it feels like that's their only avenue to it. But totally. It was a perfectly legitimate one, and it's in keeping with how they would want to play the game. You were right in saying, like, Nick White is a much improved player, playing straight up in Europe for quite a while. Probably was worthy of a shot, but if you're picking him with Foley and then Beale's not on the pitch, and you're going, like, where are the tries going to come from? Like, he's
like a forward-oriented club side. Yes, against the
Springboks, who are going to monster you in all those collisions. And even with that beautiful Teckerful kick that he end over end kind of rubber that went the length of the field into the corner, which was beautifully executed. The Springboks just exited effortlessly from the line out, and then it was actually, I think they broke up the other end, and the next score came from shortly thereafter for them. It was just like it was playing the wrong game, trying to do the wrong things, whereas this mould of team, this selection with Beale as a fulcrum at fullback, similar to what we were saying about the All Blacks with getting Bowden in there, taking some of the pressure off him, but allowing him the space and time to do what he does. Same is true for Beale. Beale is their catalyst for everything. He
was looking kind of nice, like a leader as well. I think there was one moment, I can't remember the context of it, but somebody had a bad knock on. It might have been Kepu or someone like that. Maybe it was someone even younger. It might have been Tupou.
Right.
And Beale just came over and gave him a pat on the head and a smile and a cuddle.
That's what you need.
And like that was just like, so he's like, he gets a lot of stick for being the sort of loosey goosey dude that he is. But in actuality, he is his own type of leader, and he embodies the personality that the Wallaby team need to embody. It's loose, it's fun, it's sharp, it's skillful. It looks for tries.
It needs to be more Beale, less Nick White. In terms of
and I think they've landed on a pretty decent backline selection. You're
still drawing one question over Curran, or is it
Curran Dranny at 13 is still a
the
question
only
mark.
loose question mark, but I think the structure now is safer. Like Beale was at 12 before, but I actually think 15 makes more sense for him now with Folau gone. They need to shore up their centre so they're not vulnerable to that crash ball from Delindy or whomever. Well, like in the World Cup, who will it be? Wales. It'll be Hadley Parks coming crashing.
Or Jay Davis and
or
those
Jay
wide
Davis.
channels. That's where the Curran Dranny matchup doesn't match up well.
No.
Is he going to shut down Jay Davis? No. So they got to fix that before the Wales game. We just landed on it.
Yes, it's glad we were thinking that. It's no, that's definitely true. But with Karevi in it in an inside centre, it means there's a bit more robustness. It's less soft in that particular area. But they still need to tinker with it a little bit while.
Up front they had a good scrum, but outside of that they weren't great.
I
still think Michael Hooper didn't have a great game.
No, he hasn't been his normal kind of very energetic kind of Duracell bunny self. He's just...
Are we to expect Pocock back? Do you know that? I mean, I haven't heard that he's out for the World Cup. No, so I assume I would have heard that. But
he's maybe being wrapped in cotton wool, waiting for the World Cup. Ideally, he's at number 8 for them. That's
I like Issa. No, 6. I think Issa Naisarani at 8, Pocock at 6, Hooper at 7. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, this is what's still in my fanciful head, where I'm bringing Fardy and Skelton, and then I'm
but you're not bringing Fardy and
at
Skelton.
6, and then I'm putting Skelton at 5.
Of course you're doing
that. And then I'm putting Rory Arnold at 4.
All of a sudden they become a contender for the tournament, but they're not doing that.
Yeah, I don't understand them.
Yeah.
So that's where my head's at. And
Still,
like, so ideally, Pocock's obviously at 8.
Fardy is going to be lighting it
inside.
up in the Pro 14, my friend.
No to that, even though he's playing for Leinster, our team, which is great, but it's like he should so be at the World Cup. He's been awesome the last 2 seasons. But yeah, like Pocock obviously would make a huge difference to everything, and he always does. He literally adds around 15% to any Wallaby performance just by being there. I remember even that the tour Ireland had a couple of years ago in the first game. He was an absolute nuisance, a nightmare. He shut down everything.
Completely won the game for them, as he's done many an occasion. Indeed. So hopefully they can see at least one of their world class players up in the forward pack return and make it more of a contest when they do play Wales. But that was a good win for them. I think they'll be happy with it. I think it was a necessary win for them ahead of Bledisloe.
Definitely. Like, it would have been like potentially shocking had the Argentinians turned up and lit it up, and then suddenly they were 0 from 2 and going into back-to-back Bledisloe tests. It would have been a very weak start to a World Cup kind of year and campaign.
Indeed. So
whereas they do have something to build on. They have a win at Suncorp. Apparently that was the best ever attendance for that fixture, even though it looked pretty dismal. But that's one thing.
They don't show up for Argentina, apparently.
Don't cry for me, Argentina. I don't know, but genuinely a good win. Checo will be glad to get it under his belt, and they can go and try and challenge these All Blacks, who are not infallible, but they'll definitely need to be bringing a lot more attacking dynamism to break down what the All Blacks have in defence, which is just such a robust and understanding kind of all the space on the pitch and what they're covering. I find it very hard to see this current Aussie side finding tries based on the form from this game, so they're going to need to step it up again. Need to get Beale and get Genia playing at that same level, but get Beale linking more with his outside men. They need to find a way to get around or through this All Black side. Yeah, I don't know if they will, but that's the challenge.
We'll see. So that was that game. Exciting enough as it was. Yeah, and we're going to pivot on now, change gear to Pacific Nations Cup opened up last week. There were some eventful games, obviously. The way we're going to structure our coverage of it in the show is we're going to talk about the 3 games that are taking place this weekend. And in the context of those games, we'll be reviewing how the 2 teams involved fared last week,
for sure.
And obviously, the first game that we're gonna look at is the USA versus Samoa. It's actually probably, of all the games this weekend, it's probably going to be the most competitive. I think both sides have a lot of positives to take from last week.
Definitely. And 2 very, very different games they played out last week, but both obviously positive results.
It's going to be taking place at 3:30 a.m. Irish time,
obviously.
So that's a killer.
Yeah. Saturday, ref by Nigel Owens.
So Saturday morning, ref by Nigel Owens, which is probably advantage Samoa, you would say, just given how the US chose to play at such a they were against Canada. They chose to play at such a slow pace. I think this is going to be big learnings on both sides who had positive elements from their game. Yeah. The US last week, they put a 47-19 win over Canada, who, when you're considering the last game that they played, they beat Canada 30 points to 25. The last game that they played
that's
before this.
Improvement on that front. But Canada were abysmal.
It was an awful game of rugby.
It was an awful game of rugby. It was one of the worst games I've seen in a long time.
It was really slow. It was error strewn. There was no intensity, and the US were just jogging to tries. Like, Canada were just gifting them attacking opportunities, and then even if they would mess up the attacking opportunity, Canada would gift it back to them. And so the US didn't have a huge amount to do,
and racked up 47 points in that mode.
And they did so without Mike Teo on the wing, who I'd like to see back. He's obviously very exciting.
And with Joe Tefatea, the top scoring hooker of all time,
and stalwart centre Paul Lasike was out as well. So it was
meant to come back in for them.
Somewhat weakened. Their pack is quite settled. They put in, I thought John Quill at 7 had a big game. Cameron Dolan at 8 looked useful. Adge was the star. I think he was kicking.
He was
very
certainly
well.
a difference, but a noticeable difference between him and Peter Nelson in the Canada jersey. Like there was very little control coming from the former Ulsterman. Whereas Aj looks very assured these days. He's very comfortable in his role in the US.
He was kicking difficult place kicks with relative ease, which is definitely a helpful thing.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, he made some decent space, got some good passes going, and made a hole at one point that led to a try with a nice pass on the outside.
Yeah.
So there was definitely positives. Their pack were looking physical and tough, but again, against no opposition.
Traffic cones.
Ben Landry looks to be a big pack leader in there, a big strong carrier. Then you've obviously Dolan and Quilla in the back row are useful operators with Taufatea to come back in. It starts to take the shape of a very decent pack. I'm curious to see how they'll fare this week against Samoa, and then obviously going on against better and better teams building up to the World Cup. Are we going to see that US pack out muscled, because they very much like to play a rolling maul game. Both hookers, even without Joe Taufatea, both hookers got on the scoreboard on the back of mauls. They love to maul. And that's where they go.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, because there's definitely inroads against this Samoa team for them in that front. Samoa played out a very fun game against Tonga, which, like, it was an absolute quagmire of a pitch. Was what everyone was saying. There was who was it coming out decrying the organiser?
It was two of the Tonga lads. Sam Lousy in particular started it. I thought he was like tweeting out World Rugby, how could you sign off on us to play for this pitch? What he means by that is the ref gets the say on that. And where I'm coming at it from is like, look, you don't have a 4G pitch in Apia.
No,
it is what it is. It's not that well drained. So the pitch is quite waterlogged.
Yeah, it's been raining constantly.
It's been raining. The pitch is quite waterlogged. So your option is skip this fixture, don't play it. Pitch is waterlogged, and then you're not going to get to play it again.
No, not in the World Cup. We don't
have the time. You don't have the time, so you're not going to get to play it again, or go out and embrace it.
Play a bit of mudball, schoolyard bullshit.
But the critiques of World Rugby don't make any sense to me. It's not World Rugby's job to upkeep that stadium. And if World Rugby were to take that fixture away from Apia and move it from Samoa to somewhere else, they'd be under all kinds of fire for not letting the game go to the islands.
Yes.
So I mean, I don't think World Rugby could have done anything any different except say don't play the game at all, which would have been a bit shit. And
especially considering the game we got, which
I thought Samoa in particular embraced it. I think ultimately, I know Tonga were in the lead for large parts, but they deserved to win. Yeah. I thought they played the conditions very smartly.
Kicked very well, as well as gathering kicks very well.
The young 10, Sayutani, he was kicking, he was running the show very nicely for the most part.
Which is very encouraging considering they were without Tim Nanai Williams.
And 2CPC doesn't seem to be anywhere.
There you go, yeah. Well, like in years gone by, they've been slotting Nanai Williams in at 10 just so that he can get his hands on the ball and try and make stuff happening. But he's not really a 10. No. And he would be better placed at 15 with this guy Sayutani at 10, and then suddenly there's a bit of a fulcrum there because their centres are decent.
Ray Lilo and Leo in the centres is all class. I thought on the left wing, oh god, your man's name is going to escape me, but both of their wingers looked sharp, and it was a nice balanced back row to it, and then a rampaging forward pack as well.
Definitely.
I thought there was a lot of positives in that wet weather. Their balls,
both teams actually. Tonga as well, where their the catch pass of everyone on that pitch was awesome to see, because it was horrendous. You'll never see more of a mud game than that. Like, it was really, the pitch was properly waterlogged, and you were having people mark the ball and having to kick off no pitch at all, just mud underfoot. And like Tonga were bringing a bit of a pick and jam game that worked very well, yielded both of their tries. They were pretty unstoppable. Two of their three tries. Sorry, the other came from a different way. But they were playing the conditions in that way, whereas Samoa were looking to their halfbacks to kick them into good territory and put pressure on.
Errors. I also thought the Samoan back row, Amosa at number 8 in particular, was huge. TJ Ioane had a very solid game, and Chris Vui had some lovely touches.
Oh, that lovely break that he made as well. Like it wasn't for the try actually. It was because James Fiva came in with a slap down that was very cardable, considering it was potentially penalty tribal, but it turned out to just be a penalty, which Samoa did kick over. In the terms of the battles of the tens, I thought definitely Samoa got the better of that, which is key in a game like this.
It's a strong squad. It's a strong squad. They have potentially got Jack Lamb to come back in that back row. They've potentially got 2CPC guys like Sinati, who I don't know even where they are. So they've definitely got talent to burn and a good structure to them and a very good opening outing. So the US presents a very fun opportunity for them to to bounce off one another. I actually am not sure how this is going to go. Samoa managed to play the game at a higher pace than the US did, despite playing in horrendous conditions, and the US playing in perfect conditions at altitude.
Yes, it's very, very strange. Yeah, so it's very hard to read into both of those games because they're just such a different spectacle. And you figure Samoa, and Tonga both would have wanted to play a different way, but it was when they saw where they were playing, what the pitch was like, they adopted. It was interesting to see the strategies they both adopted. It was more of a pick and jam from Tonga. It was a lot more kick.
To see the Tonga guys come out after the game and bitch about it is kind of telling in its own way, because it did look, when watching the game, that Samoa were the guys who were embracing it just that little bit more. And you could see that with Sam Lousy, who's usually such a big guy for Tonga, leaving the pitch at half time and then going on Twitter to bitch about the conditions.
It's
not necessarily
not a winning picture. And actually, we didn't even talk about the game-losing play that came from their substitute Scrummy.
Well, we'll get that. We'll get onto that when we're talking about Tonga. I think that.
I suppose so. But there was big moments that came from pressure from the Samoans, and the Samoans. Executing a beautiful running sequence of play that got both centres involved, and then ended up yielding a yellow card that then yielded another that was really the game for them. And it was just
the interplay throughout their whole back line was very on point, and they scored some lovely tries as a result in that weather. The US, for them this week, it's going to be about winning collisions. It's going to be about trying to get the better of that Samoan pack. I'm curious to see what picture it's going to be. We're still learning where these sides are at.
Don't know who's going to have the upper hand at scrum time.
If I think US maybe at scrum, but if the US have a good maul, so maybe them there. But I think a huge telling factor is going to be what happens when Ben Landry goes charging into TJ Ioane or Chris Fui. Is Ben Landry going to, as he did against the Canadians, just rampage his way through them, get the hands free, get a bit more momentum and controlled possession for the US? Or are the Samoans going to hit them back? And likewise, when Samoa have the ball, are they going to be able to force the pace of the game at a high level, or is John Quill at 7 going to be able to slow that game up? Those are the dynamics that are at play, and it's so difficult to tell when sides aren't playing, next to each other, what level they're at.
Well, this is it.
Is one side at a higher level than the other?
Hard to tell based on those two, because they were just such very, very different games. And one of them was one of my favourite games of the year, which is the Samoa one, and one my least favourite of the whole year, which is the US. But that's not even
the US's fault.
It's not. You can only play what's put in front of you, and they won comfortably. So
they did score. They scored a nice try where it would a narrow screen put little fullback Will Hooley out a mixed bag of a day. He also threw an intercept. And moved to 10 later in the game. He was put through the hole by McGinty quite nicely and did a nice little fix pass, which set the Blaine Scully, in fact it was, on the left wing, in for a nice try. And I thought that was a good piece of play. It was one of few good pieces of play. And outside of that, the whole game was just Canada giving the US attacking sets and the US shutting them down. The US executing mauls effectively and scoring. And that was enough for them. Madison Hughes came on for the US towards the end.
He looked good, actually. I thought Madison Hughes.
I didn't see too much of him.
He made a few nice little steps in midfield. He didn't have as much time. I thought Yosefo actually didn't have a great impactful game at all. I thought he was a bit. I'd be excited
to see Madison Hughes going into next week. I think both of these sides quietly are going to be quite confident right now about what their squad can do. Regardless of what happened in the last week, I think both of these sides think we have good squads. We can go to a World Cup and make some things happen, mix some shit up. I think Samoa are going to be thinking, Scotland, we're going to get some tries against you. Japan, we're going to get some tries against you. And America likewise are going to be targeting that Italy game with something fierce. Or are they in England's group? Maybe I'm wrong about that. They might be in England's group.
I'm not sure.
I'll have to look that up. But the America are definitely going to be targeting.
They're up for the physicality with anyone. This is what we mentioned it last week. But they played in the Aviva Stadium against Ireland last year, and they looked physically a match. There were deficiencies elsewhere that led to the result being what it was, but as far as the pack and the physicality was concerned, not an issue at all.
As well as the hookers played, Big Joe Taufete'e is a man to get back in there. He's a difference maker.
He makes tries out of nowhere, and you want that in a hooker.
He makes them from everywhere.
It's just awesome.
Likewise, I would like to see, obviously, who else were they missing out on? The big centre, Paul Lasike, and Mike Teo on the wing is a very quality player who could slot right back in.
He's
danger, and I don't know where he is at the moment, but it would be nice to see him slot back in. How do you see this game going? Do you have a prediction for me?
Well, it's in Suva, isn't it?
Yes,
up in Fiji.
Curtain raiser for the Fiji game.
Yeah, double header, which is great. That's
awesome.
Going to be an awesome day. Another great spectacle in the Pacific Nations. I'm kind of thinking that the better prep for this was probably Samoa. Like, in terms of, they played that mud game against a very physical Tongan side who were bringing the barnstorming carrying game to them in the mud, and they didn't repel on 2 occasions. They failed to repel it, and they know that the USA are going to bring something similar. But the USA's low intensity fixture against Canada, coupled now with a massive amount of travel in a week to get out to Suva, might mean they might be caught a bit cold by a Samoa side that'll be excited to play in not a quagmire. So I'm thinking maybe an early lead from Samoa that they could hold on to.
I think I agree with you. I think I was so impressed because attitude is such a massive factor with these Pacific Nations teams, and I was so impressed with how, to an extent, both sides, but in particular Samoa, embraced the game in the mud for what it was.
Because you could have seen slumped shoulders and sullen trudging to and from set pieces.
They were assured in how they took high balls. They were focused on making sure that they held the ball while at the same time executing high level plays, and they all seemed as a team to be on the same page and up for the fight and wanted to win, get one over on Tonga, who had beaten them last year.
There you go.
They very did. So they're in a good place. I think I'm with you that maybe Samoa to win this one, but you never know. They were good. They're in a good place themselves.
I think they're both of a good level that it should be a good competitive game anyway.
Game of the weekend, I would say.
Yeah, probably for this weekend coming. Actually the Nigel Owens reffing factor is probably, like you were saying,
tilts a
little bit in favour. All the intangibles a little bit in favour of Samoa. But two really good sides, two really good proponents of Tier 2 rugby, absolute stalwarts in this competition, and it'll be good to see them in Suva as part of a double header.
It's these kind of games that make this competition so interesting.
Exactly.
And very much looking forward to watching that one on Saturday. Although I must confess I may get up a little later and watch it not live. Thank you very much to World Rugby for broadcasting it for free on YouTube.
This is it. That's how I watched it as well. The last few games, it's handy to have them available to watch.
Awesome.
So I suppose we'll move on. The last fixture of the weekend is Fiji and Canada.
The second fixture of the weekend.
Second fixture, sorry, where's my head at? The second fixture of the weekend, Fiji and Canada, which we could go into lots of detail about why Fiji are going to win this, but Fiji are going to win this because Canada were dreadful last week. Dreadful. And Fiji were disappointing last week by their own standards. Let's start
by talking about that sort of shocking victory from Japan over Fiji. It was shocking. It wasn't. I mean, we had spoken last week on the accuracy of the Japanese attack and what that has the propensity to do to even the best of defences, and Fiji touting their defence were utterly incapable of shutting down everything that Japan were bringing in that opening 20 minutes.
So much quicker than the Maori. You could forgive Fiji for thinking that a 2-test series against the Maori is prep enough for anything that the Pacific Nations are going to bring. But the pace and accuracy with which Japan opened that game and the furious kind of
just constant switching of the play, getting Matsushima off his wing,
lines of running. They were flooding, as we were saying, going to flood certain channels with X amount of players and make the last defender make decisions, and as soon as it's wrong or it's a little bit fatigue based, they execute. And
just as an opening to the game, Fiji, who have made their goal line defence a real point of pride, getting to our line is not enough to score a try. We're going to hold you out. And they come flashing out of the line, and just a deft little kick over the top for Fukuoka, the sevens lad, to just touch it down with perfect skill. And it's gotta have been a dagger to the heart. And you could see that it kind of was. I mean, a few players, Naya Salevu at 13 in particular, kind of lost the head at the very start of the second half. He had a great chance off a broken bit of ball to bring the game back to 8 points off basically just an intercept try, and he spilled it over the line.
I remember that.
And then he was just losing the head. Every refereeing decision that was going against him, he was yelling and screaming, and eventually had to be taken off. And that was just an example of a mindset that you don't usually see the Fijian lads in.
No, it's very
but
much
they're more invested, and they want to be better, and
Mm.
they were kind of shocked at how good Japan were with ball in hand, and they were beaten in the open play, like in broken field play. They weren't as sharp as the Japanese, and really what they needed to do was exercise a bit of game management. Their pack were actually bigger and stronger than Japan.
They had some good scrums going against them. They just didn't play it in the right areas because it's not their game. It's very interesting to see them outplayed at their game, but it's like the thing that Japan always bring, as well as speed, which is all over the place, is just that technical element where they're backing a skill set. They will throw the pass because they're confident that they can both throw it and catch it. And even though they tend to be man for man smaller than pretty much any team they come up against, they execute at such a speed that it tends to not matter, and you can see big men very slow on the turn all of a sudden because they're full of doubt and panic. And Japan really did blow them away in the first half. It was a very impressive try from Fiji at 8-0 down when they managed to get it back to 7.
I thought actually Semi Kunatani, the open side for Fiji, was their best player. Brilliant all game. He was carrying really well. He kept his head up. He was one man who wasn't getting rattled.
Very physical carries.
In the fight. And played very well.
Botia scored that try as well. I think he's one who's still got a good head on his shoulders from 12. I would think he is their 12, and I would like maybe to see Radradra partner in
well, apparently Radradra and Gonova are back to fitness now and are going to be slowly coming back into the team. So that's two massive backs with huge experience playing in Europe. Those guys are going to add things
for sure.
But I would have liked to have seen, because we had bigged up Frank Lamani and Ben Volavola as actual halfbacks, I would have liked to have seen those guys to recognise what was going on the field, and they sort of did it in the second half, but that's
probably
enough.
Wait until half time for John McKee to get in the ear and go like, here, we need to be doing this, which is grand, but you need to be able to adjust on the fly as well. They should have just kicked it a bit more, made sure that Japan were only ever playing out of their half, made sure that Japan were going to have to go through your forward pack as often as possible. Set pieces, let's make it about set pieces. But then how often do you see a Fiji side think that way?
Well, indeed, because how often do you see a Fiji side so rattled by a defeat and so not embracing the next play element of it?
That was it,
But that's because they're more invested. They don't want to lose, they want to win. They have a World Cup plan, and getting blown away by Japan wasn't in the plan.
No, it was not. It's a few steps back, and they were kind of head scratching back to the drawing board.
Especially when after 20 minutes it looked like they were going to put off a cricket score on them. Like Fiji were proper rattled by it, and getting that rattled means you're more invested, and being more invested means you have to embrace the other elements of the game management elements.
True.
On a positive note, there are learnings from it, and they're not going to play a side quite like Japan in the World Cup. It's going to be different. The Georgian, Welsh and Australian challenges are different from
none of
Japan
them are
brings.
Anywhere near as frenetic as Japan play the game, and
that's why the defence that they'd worked so hard on was just undone because it couldn't adjust to the pace.
Exactly,
the sheer pace.
Let's pivot then to Japan, because Japan we're going to talk about in the context of the Japan-Tonga game. But I really want to pivot.
Okay,
I'll rein it in. But Japan were awesome. Not to put too fine a point on it. 34-21 it finished. Fiji will be disappointed in their showing, but it's no shame in it. Like, Japan were working behind closed doors this is their first game of the season. We know how quick they can be. The other side of it is two bludgeoning physical tests, very pride-filled tests against the Maori before going into a comp like this.
Well, to be fair, they had mixed up their squad.
No, they had, of course, but it sets you on a different kind of wavelength. Like, they've gone back-to-back tests against the same opposition, where the pace of the game is kind of when you're going into the second test, you kind of know what to expect from each other, and it makes the dynamic different. And then to have Japan just come out and move it so much quicker, and it just means everything you've been doing is sort of not as useful here, because it's a different picture entirely that's being presented to you. And it's also just disheartening that any time they're in the 22, they execute, take the try, and it's just the ball's in your court.
It was hurting. From Canada's perspective ahead of this game, I mean, we had touched on it in the US preview, their game against the US, a 47-19 defeat in Denver. That was as timid, in terms of how the mighty have fallen. They might be the worst team in the World Cup, and I suppose as repechage qualifiers, I suppose that makes sense. But I don't think that there's a team that looks as ill prepared as Canada do.
Sure, even looking at teams like Russia and stuff, they've been more well drilled. They've got some results this year in Rugby Europe and stuff, and they just have nothing like that to point to for Canada. They were so slow. They were so laboured. There were guys like Connor Traynor on the right wing who was just making unforced errors in there was nothing close to pressure. I mean, the US in that first half adopted a philosophy of just kicking the ball really deep. So they would have it in their own half and they would hoof it deep over Connor Traynor's head. So there's no pressure on him. The ball is bouncing back in his 22 and he would pick it up,
meander to the 22 line, have all the time in the world to respond and slice it into touch, and he did that I think 3 or 4 times, coupled with the fact that there was just knock-ons happening everywhere.
He did grab a try to pad his stats a little,
but there was not he
was try. It was their best sequence of play, was that little strike move in the last move, but
it was very much too little too late, and in open field they were just constantly putting pressure on themselves.
It was even the system, like there was no shape to what they were doing, and when you have an asset like DTH van der Merwe, and he like the only time he saw the ball he was getting wrapped up by 2 people. They put him in no space, precisely no space all day.
Like when you look at what Joe Schmidt does with someone like Jacob Stockdale, like Joe Schmidt has a lot of issues with his backline plays, but one of the things that he has noticed is the value of an X-Factor guy like Stockdale, and has manufactured some clever moves and structures to put Stockdale into space.
Yes, some little bit.
None of that from Canada.
No, they didn't even have a discernible shape to their backline a lot of the time, bar that one strike move that worked at the end, but that was off first phase. It's the multi-phase was dismal.
Yeah, and Peter Nelson coming in from Ulster, an Irishman, and he was really looked rocked, and he got ran over for a try. And he was
an international caliber player. Like Ash McGinty is starting next to Faf for Sale in the Premiership. Peter Nelson was not making the Ulster team in Pro 14. Like in
Billy Murray's was keeping him out of a jersey.
Yeah, and to have him thrust into an international competition like this is a bit far-fetched. Like it's good for him. And fair play to Peter Nelson for answering the call, but whatever. And they do seem to need something. Maybe it'll take a bit more time for him to gel with it. But none of it looks elite.
It didn't look like, given where they've been the last 4 years, like to start the season like this, there were no positives. They were beaten in every single facet of the game, and it's scary. And now the prospect of going to Suva,
an angry Fiji at Suva, who they're just going to get massacred. I can see no other end to this game than Fiji scoring many pretty tries, and Canada not. Canada might nick 1 try if the Fiji take a play off in the second half.
I think I'm almost ready to write Canada off for this World Cup. If there is to be a long-term project, it's not about this World Cup. They're not on the level, and they're going to get beaten by 4 teams, methinks.
Probably. Looking at that USA performance was shocking.
And throughout the last 4 years, there's nothing to go on that would make you think anything other than that is going to happen, which is a big shame and all of that.
Yeah.
But in the context of this World Cup, what this Fiji-Canada game really is an opportunity for those Fijian boys to dust themselves off,
get a bit of confidence back,
and
score some tries.
Don't let it become a scrappy game. You know, you got to maintain that focus. Maybe rotate a few guys in. I'd like to see one of Gonava or Daragh at least get a run out.
Been too long waiting.
Been too long.
We've seen 3 Fiji games now, and they have not appeared yet.
And then maybe even Josh Tuisova to come back in.
Would
be huge. Those are the kind of guys that I want to see in, and I just want to see Fiji embracing just playing a bit of footy against a worse opposition and scoring some tries and
in front of their home crowd, get a bit of spectacle about it.
Bit of confidence. We're still a great team despite last week's defeat. Everything that comes with that, as well as evening up their season record to 2-2, which is important as well.
And it'll be a good festival of rugby if we have that great game prior to it as well between the US and Samoa. That can be a big competitive one, and then Fiji can run in some tries for the home crowd. You know, it's a perfect plan. You know. And I think Canada will be powerless to stop them. Powerless to stop them, to be honest. It's all really in Fiji's court as far as will they play the game they should play, or will they be in their own heads a little bit, and maybe the first half is a bit stuttery. But I think not. I actually think they're going to massacre them.
I think you're probably right. We're going to move on to finally give you a chance to talk about your little Japanese men. Japan are playing Tonga. They're playing them at 11 a.m. on Saturday morning. It's in Osaka in the Kintetsu Hanazono Rugby Stadium. Going to be refereed by Jerome Garces.
Right. Good quality ref.
11 a.m. Irish time. Excuse me, everybody. Also, don't at me. This is the only time I can work in.
We work in Greenwich Mean Time only over here. Japan. What an impressive start. Amazing start. Tonga will be a challenge for them. It's tough to see. Again, the same thing we were saying about Samoa, in the context of the game they played in the mud. Like, it was good to see them adopting tactics that suited that game a little. but it's also hard to read into it at all because it's like it won't be that in Japan, in Osaka. It'll be a different dry track which you think will suit Japan, because
Tonga, of all the Pacific nations teams,
they're bigger.
They're less likely to go that way to throw the ball around. They're more forward oriented, generally speaking.
As historical precedent, they tend to be the biggest of already quite big teams in the South Sea Islanders. They, like Tongans, tend to be huge, but yes, very forward oriented. So it'll be about, can they set the pace? Can their halfbacks, can James Fiva kind of kick them into the right areas, and can they stall this Japanese blitzkrieg? And I suspect the answer is probably not. This Japan side look very well drilled. Some of their set moves were excellent. Even the try, I think it was like the third or second try that they scored up through a switch under the posts.
That was Matsushima's first try.
Lovely. Beautiful, and it was just exposing the fact that it was the scrum half, but he was that pillar and he was drifting, and it was just a perfect execution.
Everybody understanding where the space was great, but also just they do like to switch the play constantly, and they blew Fiji away last week with just for that first 20 minutes. It was super intense. They would not let the ball die. They were offloading through contact. They were constantly moving where the point of attack was going to be. When the ball came out for a line out, when Fiji scrambled it back and exited, the ball was straight in, super quick, constantly going, like a little Energizer bunny.
Yes.
Now they did fade in the second half of that game, but if they can replicate that against Tonga, it will be too much for Tonga to handle. If they can maintain anything like the pace that they brought to that Fiji game, they will get
their
in.
Accuracy of decision making and execution of it once they've made the decision. It was great.
The sharpness of their wingers. Fukuoka from the Sevens team, and Matsushima's obviously been there forever. They looked really sharp.
Took their try really well.
Matsushima got a couple of tries. That little breakaway try off a nonsense Fiji play that Matsushima just controlled really well. Fijians all around him trying to stop him.
Direct toe poked it into the little bit of space that he had for himself and dropped it down.
Leo Messi
just expertly taken. And then Fukuoka as well, the first try of the game was like expertly dotted down just as the ball's landing. Boop. And I love, that's what I associate with Japan, is just techers. Like they're always a little bit smaller, but they're so technical in how they play the game. Even how they scrummage is very technical, but then they sometimes get blown away by pure physicality, which can happen and could still be a picture come the World Cup. That's what I'm hoping as an Irishman is going to be a picture. We're just going to blow them away physically, because if they set a pace like this, they could be danger for anyone, ourselves included. Like they looked really, really good. Really, really good against a Fiji team that have looked really, really good of late.
Totally.
Like it was a very impressive, it was a big statement to make.
It was comparable to what they did to. It was a warning shot that they could replicate something like what they did to South Africa.
Yes,
in this
they
World
certainly
Cup.
have that. They have it in them. They have it in them. Like the way they play the game lends itself to that. Because if they catch a team even slightly napping or off the pace in that first half, they're gonna blitz them and they'll find the tries, because they have a lot of moves to expose space.
That said, they were struggling in the second half,
which is a theme that's happened against England in the year gone by, and you've seen that from this Japan team.
And it's probably because they try to bring so much energy to the game from the off, and then they can get out muscled. Do you think the Tongan pack stands a chance at out muscling them?
Maybe. It's tough to say. As I said, like we saw Tonga play a fun game of footy against Samoa in the mud and in the quagmire, and the pitch was so waterlogged that it was forward oriented, yes, but there was a little bit of catch pass skill in there.
To be fair to the Tongans, they were beaten ultimately by Samoa, largely due to a horrific error from the backup 9, who gave away a yellow card, which led to another yellow card.
It wasn't good. What's his name?
The backup 9, Valenu, was he?
Yes, Vailanu.
Excuse me.
No arms tackle after the ball had gone. And it was question. It could have been red. It was definitely yellow. And what ended up coming of that was another penalty that yielded a maul. That was collapsed. That was another card because it was 5 meters out, and then they scored from the ensuing scrum, which was just game over.
It was game over indeed, and they got another try to pad it as well. Samoa, but I felt like Samoa were making the winnings of that game anyway.
True.
Just because they had a little bit more out wide.
Yeah.
But Tonga's forward pack were solid. I mean, they in tough conditions they maintained good hands. They had some smarts in the first half to get that try from a nice little attacking kick.
Yes.
And then from there they put it under the jumper when they got into territory, kicked from deep, and then when they got into territory put it up under the jumper. And it's hard to see the Japanese defence, no matter how good it is, stopping a Ben Tamifuna carry from a few yards out. He's just going to go forward.
And then Sakalia scored a very similar try in the second, just the smashy smash game, bringing it in force in the rain and not being stopped, just doing like an Exeter to Chiefs type thing, just go phase, try.
There's worse ways for Tonga to attack it. I wasn't massively impressed with their 10, James Five.
No.
I thought he was loose and missed kicks.
Missed two conversions that would have helped, obviously, like even in terms of a losing bonus point, but would have helped to have them in touch. He also gave away a play that should have been carded, really, when Samoa made a break through Chris Vui made a break and then just tried to link up, put a man in for pretty much a try, and it was a slap down. So that was James Five.
Ended up working.
Yeah,
he didn't get carded.
A good subtle play. If you get away with it, then it's just good rugby, I suppose. But he wasn't completely, like, he kicked a few out on the full as well. He was a bit loose in terms of directing them, directing the play and getting them playing in the right areas. I thought actually Samoa got the better of that particular battle where it was so important in conditions like that. But I think this week, for different reasons, it'll be as important because they need to find a way of keeping Japan back and then get themselves into the right areas.
A lot of pressure on James Five to deliver.
To be turning those Japanese forwards rather than...
To be fair, that starting 9 from Tonga did quite a bit of kicking himself.
Yeah.
Fisilau, he was quite important, and he was the guy who made that kick that ended up being the first try. So both of those halfbacks, an accurate kicking game, get into territory, try and execute up front.
Well, they want to be able to hold the ball against this Japan team.
But territory and then hold the ball.
Get themselves into a place where Japan have to exit and then hold the ball for an attacking set that can be as slow as they like and deliberate as they like, but really for that first half they want to be weathering this Japan storm by not engaging with it, making it about something else. That being said, like, I think I was impressed with those Japanese halfbacks and their ability to set that pace so high and be so accurate.
And not to mention, like, any inaccuracy from Tonga, and they might not see the ball until a try is scored.
Exactly. That's the risk that they're running.
Yeah, but my instinct is that Japan are going to go from strength to strength and get this one done.
Yeah, maybe by 15.
Yeah,
that
probably seems fair.
I'm thinking that too. Like at home as well, on a dry track makes such a difference as well. Like Tonga will be coming from the mud and maybe be a little slow.
Not a great frame of mind that so much energy seems to have been devoted to giving out of it. The
pitch
track
and the
last
conditions.
week. Like it was raining.
It was raining. Deal with it. It's not going to be raining this time. Yeah. And if they get blown away by Japan, I don't know if it will be another group of excuses to respond to.
They just having lost that game. Giving it out the terrain, not quite embracing the decisions to the same extent that Samoa did, and then that awful yellow card. It's going to put them in. It's an intangible, but it just puts them in a more negative mindset. Yeah, and unfortunately, I think that's where they're going to
come into a buoyant Japanese team that are coming off a big win against Fiji, who have romped this comp for the last 3 years. Like, that's a huge scalp for Japan on day one. And it means that their World Cup prep for their home World Cup is still very much going according to the plan, and the plan is to see off this Tongan side with some.
And I'm excited to watch them. I'm excited to get more in touch with and get to know this Japanese team a bit more, because they seem worth knowing.
Definitely. Well, especially from an Irish point of view, them and the Samoans I'm watching intently with their World Cup fixtures in mind.
Yeah, with a worried enough eye. Certainly, if I was the Scots, I might be breaking out in a serious sweat looking at all of their games.
Because compared to like the Scots this year, like the Japan play a very similar game to what the Scots want to be. Like like Gregor said, he wants to be the quickest team in international rugby. I think that's Japan right now.
Yeah,
and
they don't have a Finn Russell.
That's
the difference.
Yeah.
And or a Hamish Watson.
That is a proper difference now in terms of jackling. It'll be an interesting dynamic, that game.
It will. Do Scotland have the maturity to make it about the forwards that Fiji didn't have? Yeah. Or are Scotland going to try and outquick Japan instead of just, hang on boys, our pack are better than their pack, let's play it that way, let's play an Edinburgh game as it were. Let's get Little Greg at 9 and
it's a good point, because it's you can't really take this Japan team on speed for speed, because I don't see any.
Fiji tried, and Fiji are quick.
I haven't seen a game played at like an international game played at that level of pace that was up for the first 10 to 20 minutes in that fixture from Japan. You don't really see that.
No, you don't.
Maybe actually England against Ireland this opening 16 was something similar, opening with a blitzkrieg.
And then just getting that ball in straight away as well. But yeah, Japan were looking elite, and that game between Japan and Fiji was played 2 or 3 notches above the other 2 games.
Yes.
Now the Samoa game and the Samoa Tonga game was in wet, which was
mitigated, and I think it was played to a good level as well. Yeah. Like it's that's where with this Tongan side and with Samoa, we still don't fully know. Like I thought the 10 looked great. Siutani for Tonga. But Saitani, but looked great, but it was in wet, so you don't know. We haven't actually seen his fallibilities yet in the dry track.
Yeah.
Same is true for this Tongan side. We don't really know what they look like when they're not playing. A bit of a random anomaly of a game, which is what it is always when it's in a quagmire like that. So this Tongan side now will have to up the pace on where they were last week significantly to match this Japan side. We'll definitely need to bring their physicality, because that's where their edge lies.
Bring it with discipline. No high tackles, low tackles.
That is an issue. Like it needs to be more like even in that same play where Vailanu came in with the dangerous no arms hit. The play itself could have been a try, but it was shut down by who was it? Lolahea. With a big hit on one of the centres. Was it? Might have been.
Leu.
Was it Leu on the wider one? Yeah, and it's like that was a perfect hit from the winger. Got chest into the sternum there. That's what Tongans need to be doing to this Japanese team.
Lolahea himself plays his club rugby in Japan. So
there you go. Yeah,
that's a fun dynamic.
There you go.
On there. Get him in there. Buzzing.
But you're dead right. If there's even a bit of laziness in that kind of the speed that Japan are bringing means that there could be, and if there's one swinging arm that yields a yellow card,
they won't be able to cope with 14 men against Japan.
Not a chance. So and it's a genuine risk.
Like got to stay 15 on 15 for 80 minutes if they want to win.
They could be blowing by 50 minutes and then suddenly scragging at those Japanese guys could be a bit cumbersome, and that results in kind of just fatigue based errors and yellow cards and losing games.
Yeah, so listen, it was a great start to the competition,
really
with the exception of that awful US-Canada game, which the less said about it, the better. But exciting games to come in this week, and this competition is really bearing its teeth as the top class international competition. The third best international rugby competition of any given year, apart from a year with the Rugby World Cup. Obviously.
Well, sure, yes, but it's probably the most colourful one though as well, because I love the dynamics of the different teams. Like they're all such a different match for each other that it's hard to even preview the games, because you're looking at they did this to that team, but you don't know what the others are going to bring comparatively. It's always a good balance, and fair play to Japan, Samoa, and the US for getting off to winning starts. We'll look for bounce backs from Fiji for sure. One, Canada and Tonga have it up against. Tonga have it up against them this week as far as bounce back ability. I feel like Fiji and Japan are probably the strongest 2 teams in this comp.
Oh, I'm sure that's correct. Yeah.
Like Samoa look okay, and the US look like they have some bolts to fire too.
And you never know about Tonga either. They could come rousing back into it. It's Canada who really seem to be doing the Italy job of making up the numbers.
I'd imagine they will be propping up the bottom by the end, just looking on all evidence. But we're going to keep our ear to the ground with it. We're going to keep watching the games and going to keep covering them in the weeks to come. But we'll be looking forward to the weekend's fixtures.
Awesome.
I suppose with that we'll move on.
Yeah, we're going to round up the show this week with the rugby news of the week. So there's bits and bobs of news. The first is just world rankings update. The world rankings couldn't be less important in a World Cup year, because we're having a tournament to decide them.
Yes.
South Africa, with their draw in Wellington, have overtaken England to move into the top 4.
There you go. Well, it's probably where they belong anyway. But they're just creeping up towards contenders, proper nearly number 1.
Yeah, they had been down as low as 7 when Razzie took over, and they've been just slowly working their way back
improving.
Up. They were hurt a little bit by last November when they had that defeat to Wales.
Yes,
a couple of other bad. They lost to England and Twickenham would have frustrated them.
Sure, especially when they were so physically dominant in that game. It was very strange that they.
And a semi-recurring theme for the Springboks, not to get bogged down on this quick bit of news, but a semi-recurring theme for them is to dominate games without it telling on the scoreboard.
And that's happened at the weekend just gone. The first half was all theirs, and they were 1 point down.
Even last weekend, they were significantly more superior to the Wallabies, and yet there was sort of like a 10-point game for up until the last few minutes. But I digress on that one. The next bit of news is that Toulon and Racing, unsurprising culprits, have been fined by the Eleanor of all companies or groups managing to show a bit of dignity, fining them for breaching the salary cap. Did you know there was a salary cap?
In France? Purely just theoretical.
Yeah. Well, they've been fined for breaching it. Toulon obviously signed Epsbeth and Sergio Parise this year.
Yeah.
And it was just reading the Rugby Pass article on this about Boujalal's reaction to it, and he's obviously been running for Eleanor presidency, and he's
unsuccessfally, mercifully so far. But there's
he's still done it.
Stranger things have happened.
Well, in politics.
Yeah.
Boujalal, he was advocating the France being the equivalent of the economic All Blacks.
Such a silly phrase he was coining.
Yeah, he was dogmatic in his approach that France there should be no salary cap. We should pump money into getting all the best players of rugby in there, and I guess has this sort of
dream of
tacit
Premier League.
Yeah, of being sort of like the Premier League, and it's so daft and short-sighted, and hopefully it ends up just coming unstuck for him because he's completely naive about the world of rugby, and nobody's ever going to care about Toulon. Outside of Toulon, nobody's ever going to want them to succeed because they build nothing. There's nothing to admire as compared to Toulouse. He must be raging at how well Toulouse have done with the young Frenchman. One of the quotes that he came out with was that the young Frenchmen shouldn't be getting salaries they didn't earn.
And it was like his backward, pig-headed thoughts on rugby are really annoying. But it's good to see him.
He wants to take all the best parts out of he wants to ruin the Test game by taking a bunch of South Sea Islanders and All Blacks and everyone else and not let them play for their countries because they have to play in the top tours. So he wants to ruin Test rugby, which is the biggest maker of money and viewed aspect of rugby by far.
Yes.
The World Cup will be scores more viewed. I mean, by a magnitude of 10, by a factor of 10, you would imagine the Rugby World Cup will be more viewed than the top tours.
Yeah.
But he wants to ruin that. He wants to ruin, Welsh rugby, Irish rugby will take their stars, so their domestic leagues are going to be less interesting. Make it all about the top tours, and even if he managed to achieve all of that, he still wouldn't get. And he doesn't know it. He wouldn't get big sponsor money from America. He wouldn't get all Kiwis, people from New Zealand watching the top tours. He wouldn't get Irish people in any greater volume than they are now watching the top tours. It would just gut the game and end up making no money and no sense, and nobody would care anyway. Nobody's ever going to care about the top tours. Like I care about it from a rugby nerd perspective, but from a marketing perspective of being this economic giant, this idea that you have in your head of creating a Premier League where everybody cares about the goings on between Bordeaux Begla and Cast on a Sunday, it's a myth. It's not going to happen. No matter how many people you import, it's not going to happen.
Or how much money you pump into this idea, ill-advisedly as well. Like that fact, like the purchase of Sergio Parise for a ludicrous amount of money. It's just telling about how little he actually knows about the game on the pitch. He's a small man who wants a bunch of big men on his payroll.
Julian Savia is a typical example. He had been out of form and out of sorts a while before he signed him, and he signed him without knowing that because he doesn't understand the first thing about the game, and then berated him publicly when he didn't deliver on something that wasn't there when he signed him. I mean, he's an unbelievably daft and naive operator of a club, and yet he consistently makes headlines because there's a danger. I mean,
there's a risk of him succeeding and all that. If he becomes Eleanor president, it's a bad thing for the game.
This is a world where Boris Johnson became prime minister and Donald Trump became president. I mean, people who had been jokes with crazy ideas, who just sound like completely naive morons and are wrong about everything, end up just acquiring power, and there doesn't seem to be a lot you can do about it.
And he would definitely fit that mould.
He would, wouldn't he? He would just be the rugby equivalent. And he is that. So here's hoping that things go wrong for Boujalal and all of his future endeavours as per the game of rugby.
I hope so, and long live Toulouse.
And long live Toulouse,
so with that, I suppose we'll park that because it's too easy to get into tirade levels when we bring up Boujalal on the podcast, and you'll notice the subscribers, we rarely bring him up, but when we do, it's not really positive. We can't really feign it.
Maybe he loves his family.
Maybe, I don't know, but I don't really care. I'm more about rugby. Rugby is my family, and he is a force for evil in our game.
Truly.
But in good news, Geordie's re-signed for the Canes.
Yeah,
Yay.
you don't get everything Blues.
Yeah.
That's good for him.
Yeah.
Good for you, Geordie.
Yes, sticking with it. Go
Yeah.
on. He maybe playing 10 next year. Who knows?
Yeah, he's sort of meandered. I remember hearing an interview with him where he said that he wanted his first position was second 5/8 or first centre 12. Never seen him play 12.
No, I've rarely seen. Has he? He may have done actually worn 12 this season.
Yeah, he looks kind of like a 12, but I never really see him there. So
he would be quite an Aussie mould of 12, to be fair, because he has a kicking game as well.
He does have a kicking game. He's
game.
a strong carry game as well.
Yeah.
Be curious to see how he defend that channel. But either way,
Definitely.
he's going to be playing on with the Canes wherever he is. Maybe at 10. Although I heard rumours that Cruden, if he was to return to Super Rugby,
might be coming to the Canes,
which to fill the Barrett void.
Yeah, and that does. To be fair, that's a good mould of player. It would be good for him to get the hell out of Montpellier. In similar to Bougelal fashion, Montpellier are not a force for good in the game. See our notes on Nagusa and Nadolo for reference. But yeah, so it would be nice to see Cruden come back and join. He's signed on as a medical joker, I think, until after the World Cup. Cruden for Montpellier. But that leads us to, it seems he's eyeing up a move for Super Rugby.
Yeah, which starts in January.
Yeah. So that's why he hasn't signed on further than that. And it also throws a bit of water on that rumour about him going to Glasgow.
Oh, it does.
Which would have been nice, but I think that's
team
now
up with
gone.
Dave Rennie, that's gone. Yeah,
no, that's gone.
Didn't work out.
The other good news in terms of signing news is Curtly Beale re-signs for the Taz, which means recommitted to the Aussie rugby. He's such a, like we were saying earlier on, why he gets the flack he does, I do not know. He is a legend of Australian rugby, and he is the best thing about it right now.
The greatest Aussie player of this era.
Yeah, him and Pocock.
Sorry. Pocock keeps sorry everybody. Pocock
because he's not there.
Yeah, Pocock is of course the greatest Aussie player of this era. He is apart from Pocock, the greatest Aussie player of this year.
Greatest Aussie back.
And he has a great attitude, and he seems like a leader in the Wallaby team and has taken the lead on this one. He's going to stay and finish his career with the Taz.
It's like a very similar thing to what Sam Warburton did when he was signing the first central contract for Wales. Yeah. It's a good vote of confidence in Wallaby rugby.
A guy like Curtly, he could have been picked up for Montpellier or Toulon.
Yeah, Bougelal probably could have given him a call and given him a big bag of money to come and get fat in France.
He's not big enough for Bougelal.
No, he's not, to be fair. You'd sooner see him at Racing.
Yeah.
But he could have. But it could have been.
Yeah, indeed. But good for him. Good for him doing
definitely.
That.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me want to root for the Taz.
It does a little, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling. You don't normally like to root for the Taz.
Yeah, they're very difficult to root for.
It's true. Not as difficult as the Brumbies, but difficult.
Yeah.
You know, it was easier when it was the Western Force.
It was a lot easier. Indeed. So much easier back then. But yeah, no, that's great news, and I'm happy to see Curtly do that.
Yeah.
Then the next bit of news is sort of an odd one. To be honest with you, I have read a headline and I haven't looked into this story.
I read a bit about it.
So you tell us about it then.
Alright, so the female fan is an Irish fan, has taken legal action against the IRFU and the company that run the Aviva Stadium, which is New Stadium DIC, after she allegedly was struck by a ball in the game between Ireland and the All Blacks back in November. She was hit in the head by a ball, struck, and apparently now she's pursuing legal action, which is not unprecedented. I was reading in the article as well, there was a solicitor's take on it. Apparently it comes up, it's rare in rugby. I think this is one of the first cases of its kind in rugby. It happens in golf, it happens in baseball, small ball sports that can really hurt you, go much faster. I think there was like 101 cases that appear in soccer across the world last year as well, so it's not uncommon for a bigger ball sport to have these cases, but they tend to get thrown out because it's hard.
It's understood that when you attend these games, you're putting yourself into that kind of risk. Like it's hard to paint getting hit by a golf ball at a golf event where balls do routinely fly into the crowds as negligence by anybody.
No,
it's just you're taking a risk, and sometimes that comes up muckers for you.
This is it, and then you may think it's less risky in rugby, so the onus isn't on yourself. My point on this is it comes in the wake of you're probably not privy to Irish news if you're from anywhere else, but there's quite a claim culture that we're fighting, and there was a big story with a politician involved a little while ago to do with that, claiming for really frivolous reasons that are
more of a story about Irish litigation than anything else to do with rugby in a broader sense, and will likely not succeed.
Yes, I would hope I don't think it gets thrown
it's
out.
that massive a story.
It's not a big story. It is a headline, but it's one thing that vexed me. But the point I wanted to make about it is, like, you were hit in the head by a rugby ball when Ireland were beating the All Blacks. Watch the ball. God damn it. Like, where were you looking? Were you looking over your shoulder? Were you thinking, like, no, watch the damn game? That's my take on it all.
Catch the ball.
Catch the ball.
Yeah,
this is it. I've seen kids catch the ball. I've seen guys walking up with 4 pints in their hands, flick a back heel and kick the ball back.
That was one guy, and he's a legend.
One legend of a man. But, like, you know, getting hit in the face by the ball, I have no sympathy at all, and I hope this gets thrown out. But it was one that popped up on Rugby Pass, so we figured we'd chuck it in there because it had the Irish thing in it as well. It really did surprise me when I was reading it.
An odd one anyway. But hopefully nothing
comes of it, because nothing is deserved.
This is a curious story. For the second week in a row, we have a story, and for the second week in a row, it is about a guy I've never heard of.
Yes,
it was Miles Normandale getting a 2-year ban for testing positive for the banned substance clomiphene.
Clomiphene, which is apparently it's an estrogen suppressor that's associated with steroid use, because taking steroids interrupts your estrogen levels, so a lot of them take supplements and things and that. And this is a banned substance, prohibited substance, came up in a urine test. Your man himself, I was reading a bit about him, Normandale, had an interesting career where he was basically a semi-pro for Cardiff Blues in some of the lower tiers. He would rarely get Pro 14 outings. But he had a nasty injury in 2017 that caused him to pretty much play out. He was released from his contract while he was still recovering from the injury, so he kind of figured his career was over. Then once he'd gone through the rehab and stuff, he ended up getting an offer to come back and re-sign in a semi-professional capacity, and he went for it in 2018, late 2018, right. I think that was. Played a couple of games for them, and then it was a random urine test towards the end of 2018 where he came up positive for this.
So that 2-year ban
is him done. That's the end of his career, and rightly so. I think when these things come about, they need to be duly punished.
It's such an interesting dynamic going on. I feel like it's when your player is right on the cusp of something, but they can't quite get there, and they just need that extra edge. Like someone who's just not quite good enough to make it as a pro, and like. But even you'd wonder about higher levels than that, and it's so difficult to know what to even make of these stories. Are these stories an example of guys getting caught out by a rigorous testing system, which you'd like to think, or are they, a little the tip of the iceberg, as it were, in terms of what's going on beneath the surface? It's just so difficult to know.
We don't know. We're not privy to it, so it's hard to even comment on it. But the comment we'll make is that it's the second story on this issue that's emerged in the last couple of weeks.
We're yet to see a high profile case.
Yeah.
The highest profile case is Grobler from back in the day. And actually there was a scandal with South African schools. That was quite rampant in South African schools rugby, which is utterly unsurprising, given that we saw tacit approvals of that sort of behaviour in Dublin schools from time to time, and we didn't even go to the biggest school in Dublin. So you would wonder, you don't know, but once they get into a system like, for example, Leinster Rugby, if that stuff was going on, it would have to be institutionalised and going on with everybody. Because there's no way that it's happening without Leinster knowing.
There's such a micromanager of all their players that
So it would feel less likely that it's going on in Leinster with nothing being caught, and if it is going on in Leinster, the chances are it's like systemic cheating, which you can't allege because I don't think it's true. I don't know.
It's interesting though. It's something worth keeping an eye on. It's something that should be stamped out of the game entirely. So I have no objections to the 2-year ban being received for even though I do have some sympathy for the scenario but still no place for that in the sport, and that's just the case of it. I would have very little sympathy. You chose to do this, really gotta own it, and I'm sure he is, but it was interesting that it's popped up twice in the last few weeks. It will be curious to see how many more of those stories emerge this side of the World Cup.
Hopefully none.
And then other news, Jack Noel has departed from the England squad to head back to England for just a surgical checkup on his ankle, apparently, which is part of the rehab process. They're still seemingly confident that he's going to be back for the World Cup, although they were deliberately vague as far as giving any time frame on return from injury. I
suspect you won't see him in August.
No. In any of those warm-up games, maybe not.
It's an interesting one. He could be a crucial enough player for them.
He's a workhorse. I really do like what he brings. Hope we're rooting for him to get back and
100%.
fit and fighting ready and be at the World Cup.
Absolutely.
good to hear that he's going through all those appropriate checkups and not fighting through it, running it off, so to speak.
Yes, the Currie Cup has been going on in South Africa. I watched one of the games actually where the Lions managed to come back from behind to beat Western Province in Newlands.
30-28 away from home. That was probably the game of the weekend.
It was a great game. The Cheetahs also put a massive score on the Griquas, and the Bulls got a nice away win against the Pumas, and that's left the table with the Cheetahs and Griquas up top on 10 points. Golden Lions one behind on 9. Western Province be the Stormers equivalent on 7. Sharks and Bulls on 5 points each at 5 and 6, and bottom of the table on 3 points is the Pumas,
who look like they're going to be the ones to make way for probably the Jaguars.
Well, it's good to see the Sharks getting on the board with win last week. In fact, so that's a relief. And I'll keep a side eye on it.
They're definitely going to have a part to play in our rugby news this week segments in the weeks to come. We're going to touch base. The Currie Cup's worth keeping an ear.
Keeping abreast of it anyway.
Yeah, it's not the international footy, so that's why it's been relegated to this slot. But still worth keeping an ear to the ground on that. And then finally, some interesting news. I thought was that Scandinavian fans from Denmark, Sweden, Finland, and Norway are going to have access to the World Cup, kind of unprecedented access to the World Cup now that the Nordic Entertainment Group, or NENT, as their acronym is, have bought the exclusive rights from World Rugby to broadcast the World Cup in Scandinavia. So that's a really good sign, I think. That's just it's a sign of the game growing. It's the appeal of the game growing, and means it's probably
people are going to be watching this. There's another sign that this World Cup is going to be the biggest ever.
And last World Cup was a huge success. 2015 was a huge success in England and
English. I wonder to what extent Japanese time will influence it a little bit.
I wonder.
It's obviously great that Scandinavia is going to get to watch it, but also they are in early morning, as opposed to in prime time as the England World Cup was. But we still get the impression that this is going to be the most viewed ever, that there's going to be more and more places.
More eyeballs from America, now obviously Scandinavia coming in as well.
And we should be set for an exciting, colourful future for the game where more and more nations are getting involved and embracing it and watching it. And I outside of concussion, which I think they're doing a very creditable job at addressing, I can't see many slip-ups between here and just the game growing. The game feels like it's on a track that's very positive.
For sure.
And long may it continue.
And this is just symptomatic of that. Yep. So if we have any Scandinavian viewers, happy to have you.
Welcome.
We're welcome indeed. Welcome into the world of rugby.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's it then.
That's it. That was a long show.
It was.
Listen, we had a lot to talk about, and talk about it we did. So this is a bit of a throwback to old school ORP, which used to be over 2 hours on the regular.
On the reg. We're trying to be more abridged, but there was a lot to talk about this time.
There was a lot to talk about. Yeah.
So if you've stuck with us this long, we love you. Thanks very much.
Yep. Awesome.
Otherwise, we'll see you next week.
We will indeed
chat more rugby. We're going to have to preview those last 2 Rugby Championship games.
Well, actually, next week, not only is the Blooming Premier League and the soccer starting again, what a crazy thought that is, England are playing Wales.
Yeah. So
next week.
This is it.
How are we going to fit all of this into a show that isn't 4 hours long? Think about us.
I know, right.
And you, the poor viewer who has to listen to us.
We're just a click away.
Yeah, we are. Seriously, for your health, you can click away.
Yeah, or wait for the shorter vids that come when we abridge it up for more condensed, more absorbable bite-sized chunks. But we will be getting into, of course, all those World Cup warm-ups, as well as the Rugby Championship wrapping up, as well as the Pacific Nations Cup action from the weekend to come. Yeah, it's going to be a busy one. So don't miss it. That'll be for episode 60. It's going to be another big marathon.
I think England Wales is going to have to take the back seat.
Yeah,
as a World Cup warm up to Pacific Nations and Rugby Championship. Yeah, I think that's going to be the bottom of the pile.
I think so. Yeah. But sure. Look, we'll get into all that next week. It's past time we wrap this up. So we'll see you later, folks.
Like, comment, subscribe, share. Bell.
Yes.
Get the bell. Get the bell.
All right. Bye.
Oh dear, that died in the air. That's the worst in weeks.
Picked off by Snyman. Too high.
Overthrow. No good either.
Bongi and Banambi stuff.